Chapter 173. Dao Soldiers. After witnessing the Dao soldiers of Kuraki Academy and Dark World, Yi Xian had an idea. That was to establish a Dao soldier belonging to Azure Billow Academy. Previously, after seeing the Black Flame Cavalry, he was even more certain of this idea. Azure Billow Academy must have its own powerful Dao soldier. Now, he had the equipment. Although he did not have much money, he would have it soon. He only lacked people. Naturally, he would select people from the army. These soldiers had rich combat experience. As long as they were nurtured, they would definitely become elites that could defeat 100 in the future. Jiang Jiu nodded. All right, I will select the people. At this moment, Lu Jioga arrived in front of Yi Xian and Jiang Jiu in her wheelchair. Both of them looked at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga took out a map and pointed at it. Previously, I had the king lead troops to support Marshal Lin Shao. The Chu kingdom has suffered a great defeat. I believe the Yu kingdom has also retreated. Great Cloud Empire's Black Flame Cavalry was completely annihilated. In a short period of time, they would not dare to easily offend us. This is a golden opportunity for our state of Jiang. Jiang Jiu said in a deep voice, "Annihilate Chu state?" Lu Jioga smiled. Naturally. If we don't annihilate them now, when? Jiang Jiu shook his head. Although our state of Jiang won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. If another war breaks out, as she spoke, she glanced at the soldiers in the field. Most of the soldiers were already covered in wounds. Lu Jioga smiled. I understand your highness worries. To annihilate these two countries, we do not need an army. One person is enough. One person? Jiang Jiu was stunned, then looked at Yi Xian. Lu Jioga looked at Yi Xian. State scholar Ye's name has spread throughout Azure Province. From today onwards, the experts of Myriad Law Realm and above will not dare to make a move. State scholar Yi should grasp such a good opportunity. Yi Xian shook his head. I alone cannot annihilate two countries. Lu Jioga raised the corner of his mouth and did not speak. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, I understand. After speaking, he looked at Jianji and the other two. The three of you bring the students back to Azure Billow Academy. The three of you will be responsible for the Academy's affairs. Mo Yunqi smiled bitterly. Bandit Yi, we've just finished fighting. Let's take a break. Yi Xian walked to the front of Mo Yunqi and extended his right hand. There are dozens of people from Tsanglan Academy. Are you going to support them? The corner of Mo Yunqi's mouth twitched. He took a step back. Fine, pretend I didn't say anything. Yi Xian kicked Mo Yunqi. Get lost. Mo Yunqi snickered, turned around, and ran. Ji Anji walked in front of Yi Xian. Be careful. After saying that, she turned around and left. However, she didn't take 2 steps before she suddenly returned to Yi Xian. She took out a storage ring and placed it in Yi Xian's hand. Then she turned around and left. This time, she didn't look back. Yi Xian took a look at the storage ring, and when he saw what was inside, he was stunned. Steamed bun. Chicken drumstick. The storage ring was filled with these 3 items. Most importantly, there were quite a lot of them. There were at least a few hundred steamed buns, a few hundred steamed buns, and 1,000 chicken drumsticks. Oh my God! Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Bai Zai patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. Go home early. After saying that, he turned around and left. The Tsanglan Academy students came to Yi Xian. Everyone bowed in unison. Take care, Dean. After saying that, everyone turned around and left. However, there was one person who stayed behind. Yi Xian. Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Xian. She lowered her head slightly, but soon she plucked up her courage and looked at Yi Xian. I just killed 41 people. I killed the most. After saying that, she clenched her 2 small hands tightly. There was some excitement in her eyes. Yi Xian smiled. Impressive. After saying that, he opened his palm. A supreme-grade spiritual weapon appeared in front of Yi Xian. This is your reward. Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Xian smiled. You don't like it? Yi Xian hurriedly took that supreme-grade spiritual weapon. This supreme-grade spiritual weapon was a dagger. It was very small and exquisite. It was the most suitable weapon for Yi Xian. Yi Xian was obviously very fond of it. She caressed it again and again. Yi Xian said softly, after going back, cultivate well. Only when your strength is strong can you live a better life. Yi Xian nodded her little head. She hesitated for a while and then said softly, when there's no one around, can I call you cousin? Cousin. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. In the blink of an eye, he smiled and said, sure. Yi Xian was stunned. Obviously, she did not expect Yi Xian to agree. She immediately hugged Yi Xian. Her tears flowed uncontrollably. Cousin. Yi Xian's heart was rather complicated. Yi family. He was becoming more and more unfamiliar with this family. After a while, Yi Xian and the Zhonglan Academy students had already left. Yi Xian did not linger. After bidding farewell to Jiang Jiu, he also left. After watching Yi Xian completely disappear in the distance, Jiang Jiu withdrew his gaze. Beside Jiang Jiu, Lu Jioga suddenly said, he's very outstanding. Jiang Jiu looked at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga smiled slightly. Your Highness, he's growing very quickly. In another year, he might have already gone to the divine central continent. At that time, will your Highness be able to keep up with his footsteps? Jiang Jiu said softly, what are you trying to say, State Preceptor Lu? Lu Jioga said softly, your Highness is a smart man. You should know what I mean. Jiang Jiu was silent. At this moment, Lu Jioga suddenly took out a thick black book. The military manual contains 72 battle strategies of my school. It also has the effect of evolving the battlefield. With a single thought, the battle situation can automatically evolve in your mind. Countless endings can be imagined in your mind. In addition, there is also the military school's supreme cultivation method, military tactics. In addition, there are also martial arts techniques. As she spoke, she looked at Lu Jioga. If you agree to my school's successor outside the city, from this moment on, I will be your Dao protector. Dao protector? Jiang Jiu frowned slightly. Military school? Lu Jioga smiled. Military school. Only by joining my school will you be able to lead Dao soldiers, immortal soldiers, and even legendary soul soldiers, or even existences above them. Jiang Jiu looked deeply at Lu Jioga. Who exactly are you? Lu Jioga lightly tapped her legs with both hands. A cripple. Come with me. With that, she turned and left. Jiang Jiu was silent for a moment, then followed. The news of the battle at Mizar City quickly spread throughout the Azure Province. The entire Azure Province was shocked. The Black Flame Army was completely annihilated. When they received this news, countless people were shocked. This was the Black Flame Army, the most powerful cavalry in the entire Azure Province. And then it was all gone. Yi Xian. Yi Xian's name spread like the plague, quickly spreading throughout the Azure Province. Of course, there was another reason why Yi Xian's name spread so quickly. It was because Yi Xian was now the sword master. A sword master who was not even 20 years old. Not to mention in the Azure Province, even in a place like the Divine Central Continent, he would be considered a top monster. As Yi Xian's fame rose, some matters of the past were also dug up. For example, Yi Xian's expulsion from Kuraki College. Now, Kuraki College in the entire Azure Province had become a laughingstock. As for the protagonist, Yi Xian had arrived at the imperial capital of Chu. At this moment, the people of Chu were in a state of panic. The 100,000 cavalrymen of Chu were defeated, and less than 30,000 returned. After suffering such a heavy blow, Chu no longer had any confidence. Especially now that Kuraki College and the Great Cloud Empire seemed to have disappeared. Without the backing of Kuraki College, Dark World, and the Great Cloud Empire, could Chu resist Jiang? Would the kingdom of Jiang give up? The entire Chu was in a panic. In the imperial palace of Chu, the monarch of Chu sat on the dragon throne in the main hall. Below him were the ministers of Chu. The monarch of Chu had a cold expression. What? Are you all mute? Below him, no one spoke. The monarch of Chu suddenly stood up and said angrily, "You are all good for nothings. Is Jiang Guizhou so terrifying? Did he make you lose your courage?" Suddenly, a guard rushed into the main hall in panic. A man has appeared at the entrance of the palace. He calls himself Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Everyone's expression changed drastically. The monarch of Chu slumped down on the dragon throne, and his face was extremely pale. The ministers of Chu had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces as well. It should be said that they were terrified. They'd heard how Yi Xian had treated Tang in the past. He was a homicidal maniac. Is he here to slaughter the imperial family of Chu? At this moment, a man suddenly appeared at the entrance of the main hall. The man's eyes were slightly closed and he wore an ink-white robe. On his robe, there was still fresh blood that had yet to dry. In his hand, there was a sword that was slowly dripping with fresh blood. Yi Xian. After Yi Xian arrived in Chu, he directly headed for the imperial palace. Along the way, he killed many people. When the soldiers of Chu learned of his name, they didn't dare to block his path. Hence, his journey from the outside of the palace to the main hall could be considered as smooth sailing. Seeing Yi Xian, the ministers retreated one after another. Their eyes were filled with fear. Only a few generals didn't retreat, but their eyes were also filled with dread. On the dragon throne, the monarch of Chu stared fixedly at Yi Xian. His fists were clenched tightly, and they were trembling slightly. Yi Xian raised his sword and slowly walked to the front of the monarch. He raised his head and faced the monarch. Let me introduce myself. My name is Yi Xian, and I'm from Jiang country. I'm the current dean of Zhonglan Academy. Impudent. Not far away, a general suddenly roared in anger. Yi Xian, this is the imperial palace of Chu. How dare you be so impudent? The general's voice stopped abruptly, because a sword had been inserted between his brows. The general's eyes were wide open. Fresh blood slowly flowed out from between his brows, and in an instant his face was dyed red. Subsequently, his entire body fell to the ground. Everyone present was stunned. Yi Xian opened his right hand, and the sword suddenly flew out from between the general's brows. When it reappeared, it was already in Yi Xian's palm. Yi Xian shook his head. I respect your backbone and courage. But it's time for me to speak. Please give me some face. Otherwise, I'll make all of you speechless for the rest of your lives. After he finished speaking, he slowly walked towards the monarch of Chu. At this moment, an old man appeared behind the monarch. A Dharma realm expert. Yi Xian pointed the spirit-elegant sword at the Dharma realm expert. If you don't want Chu country to perish, then get lost. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and his eyes were filled with dread. This was because the cause of Li Mu's death had spread throughout the entire Qingzhou. Yi Xian walked in front of the monarch of Chu. Just as the monarch was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly slashed out with his sword. The monarch of Chu's eyes widened, and he stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grabbed the monarch of Chu's hair with his left hand, and with a light lift, the monarch's head was lifted up. Yi Xian kicked the monarch of Chu's corpse away. He sat on the dragon throne, and he placed the bloody head on the table in front of him. Now, let's talk about the compensation, especially the compensation for my mental distress. This is a big issue, and we need to discuss it properly. Everyone, P.S. Don't go away. Chapter 174. The hall was deathly silent, and it was deathly still. The monarch of Chu had died just like that. Some of the weaker ministers of Chu had already collapsed to the ground, while the others were trembling uncontrollably. Only a few of them were able to maintain their composure. Behind Yi Xian, the old man's face was extremely gloomy. He was the only one who had the ability to kill Yi Xian, but he did not dare to do so. Firstly, if he did, he would most likely die first. Li Mu was the best outcome. He was a Dharma defensive realm expert. Secondly, if he did, Yi Xian might vent his anger on the citizens of Chu. By then, all the citizens of Chu would suffer. He could not do it. The old man slowly closed his eyes. Finally he sighed. Chu was now a piece of meat on the chopping board of Jiang. Jiang could cut it however he wanted. Yi Xian faced the ministers of Chu. Send a representative. No one dared to step forward. Yi Xian shrugged. Then kill them all. The ministers of Chu were shocked when they heard Yi Xian's words. At this moment, a hunchbacked old man walked out. The old man stopped not far from Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian without any fear in his eyes. Old man, Grand Tutor of Chu, Li Shi. Yi Xian nodded. I only have a few conditions. Listen carefully. If you don't agree, we'll get someone else to speak. As he spoke, he placed the Lingxiu sword on the table. Firstly, I want to take away all the treasures in Chu's treasury. Secondly, Chu has to compensate Jiang country 500 million gold coins every year. Thirdly, Chu has a city called Northern City. This city is quite close to Jiang country. In the future, it will belong to Jiang country. Do you have any problems with these three conditions? As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, the expressions of the ministers of Chu turned extremely ugly. Take away all the treasures in Chu's treasury? With this, the Chu country had become a poor country. In addition, the Chu country had to compensate 500 million gold coins every year. This was akin to raising the Chu country like a sheep. The most important thing was the northern city. This city was the second largest city in the Chu country, second only to the imperial capital of the Chu country. Not only that, this city had a natural geographical advantage. To the south, it could defend against the Jiang country and the Ning country. To the back, there was a natural barrier. This was because on both sides of the northern city, there was a vast river. If the Jiang kingdom were to obtain this city, it would be equivalent to grabbing the throat of the Chu kingdom. Li Shi was so angry that his body was trembling. He glared at Yi Xian and said, "You might as well destroy my Chu country." Yi Xian abruptly stood up and kicked the head of the Chu emperor towards Li Shi. He leaned forward and laughed evilly. Destroy your Chu country? You think I don't want to? You think I can't do it? I didn't destroy your Chu state because I didn't want more soldiers of my Jiang state to die. As he spoke, he walked in front of Li Shi. Also, please remember, the war was not started by my Jiang country, it was started by your Chu country. Li Shi clenched his fists tightly. Don't you think doing this is too cruel? The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. Cruel? If your Chu country were to attack my Jiang country, would you talk about being cruel to my Jiang country? No, I wouldn't. If your Chu country were to attack my Jiang country, countless citizens of my Jiang country would die, and they would die very miserably. As he spoke, he turned around and walked back to the dragon throne. I'm not a person who's easy to talk to, especially when it comes to your Chu country. I don't want to waste my breath. Whether you can or not, it's just a matter of a single word. As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit-elegant sword on the table in front of Yi Xian suddenly trembled slightly. The hall fell silent once more. A threat? Yi Xian was blatantly threatening him without the slightest bit of concealment. Li Shi's body was trembling. Agree? If he agreed, the vitality of the Chu country would be greatly damaged, and it would become a third-rate country. If he didn't agree, the murderous devil in front of him would definitely spill blood in the hall. Yi Xian definitely dared to do it, and he had the strength to do it. No one doubted this. My Chu country agrees. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from outside the hall. Everyone turned around and saw a woman in her 20s standing at the entrance of the hall. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. She was wearing a gorgeous palace dress with floral patterns. Upon seeing the woman, the ministers of Chu all bowed in unison. First princess of the Chu kingdom, Chu Chaohan. Under everyone's gaze, Chu Chaohan slowly walked up to Yi Xian and looked straight at Yi Xian. My Chu country agrees to your three conditions. Yi Xian nodded. Bring me to the treasury of Chu. Chu Chaohan turned to leave. Just like that, under Chu Chaohan's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the Chu kingdom's treasury. Yi Xian didn't even look at them and just stored them all in the World Prison Pagoda. From start to finish, Chu Chaohan did not speak a single word. Chu Chaohan slowly followed Yi Xian out of the treasury. At the entrance, Yi Xian raised his head and looked down. Below him, there were tens of thousands of Chu soldiers. In the eyes of these soldiers, there was fear and dread, but also anger and resentment. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. I'm not afraid of your revenge, not in the slightest. Finishing his words, he slowly walked into the distance. At the start, there were two soldiers who did not give way, but in the next moment, their heads were sent flying. In an instant, the group of Chu soldiers was about to make a move. At this time, Chu Chaonan, who was not far away, suddenly roared, "Retreat!" The group of soldiers looked at Chu Chaonan. Chu Chaonan gave them a cold glance. "All of you retreat. Those who disobey will have their families executed." The group of soldiers unwillingly retreated to the sides, opening up a path. Yi Xian walked into the distance. Suddenly he stopped. At this time, a sword was pressed against Chu Chaonan's forehead. Chu Chaonan was expressionless, and there was not the slightest ripple in his eyes. The surrounding soldiers were enraged, ready to make a move at any time. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I don't want Zhang's soldiers to get involved in the war. You're a smart woman. You should know what to do to let Chu live longer." Chu Chaonan stared at Yi Xian. "Don't worry. Before you die, Chu's soldiers will not take half a step into Zhang's territory." Yi Xian nodded. "You're frank enough. Remember your words. While I'm alive, if Chu makes any moves, things won't be as simple as today." Finishing his words, he quickly walked into the distance. On both sides, none of the Chu soldiers dared to move. In front of the treasury, Chu Chaonan slowly closed his eyes. At this time, the myriad law realm old man from the great hall appeared beside Chu Chaonan. Chu Chaonan said softly, "Has Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire not replied?" The old man shook his head. Chu Chaonan's expression instantly turned cold. Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire. The moment Chu's soldiers were defeated, Chu had sought reinforcements from Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire. This was because Chu knew that Jiang wouldn't let this matter rest. However, Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire didn't reply at all. The old man sighed. That day, the old man didn't agree to attack Jiang. Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire won't treat Chu as an ally. They're just making use of Chu. Unfortunately, the king doesn't listen. Sigh. Chu Chaonan sneered. "Don't worry. They will suffer the same fate as Jiang today." As she spoke, she looked in the direction where Yi Xian had left. "This person will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He won't let Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire off." The old man nodded. That day, Jiang's Kuraki College drove this person away. How foolish. Chu Chaonan slowly closed his eyes. It's Jiang's fortune to have such a person. After leaving Chu, Yi Xian didn't return to Jiang. Instead, he went to Yu. He alone wouldn't be able to destroy Chu and Yu. Even if Jiang attacked with all its troops, it wouldn't be able to destroy these two countries in a short period of time. Moreover, even if they were destroyed, Jiang's strength would be greatly damaged. Moreover, there was still Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire. Therefore, sending troops now would be disadvantageous to Jiang. However, it was impossible to let Chu and Yu off just like that. Therefore, he thought of the same thing as Lu Jiuge. Let the two countries recover first. If this chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. The two countries wouldn't be able to recruit soldiers for at least 10 years. This was the reason why he came to plunder them. After he looted them, the two countries would definitely suffer a great loss. Jiang could take this opportunity to develop vigorously. With this, Jiang would become stronger and stronger. Apart from that, Songlan College also needed to develop. And development, you need to spend money. Especially now that he wanted to build a Dao soldier. One could imagine how much money was needed to build a Dao soldier. Yu State. One day later, Yi Xian arrived at Yu State. Just like Chu State, Yu State was in a panic after knowing that Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire were defeated. Obviously, they were afraid of Jiang State's revenge. Yu State's Imperial Palace. At this moment, the Yu State's Imperial Palace was heavily guarded. Because Yu State already knew about what happened in Chu State. In the Imperial Palace, the king of Yu State sat on the dragon throne. Dozens of Yu State's ministers stood in front of him. The Imperial Palace was very quiet and the atmosphere was heavy. The king of Yu State glanced at the crowd. No one wants to say anything? A Yu State's minister stood up. I will live and die with Yu State. Countless ministers saluted in unison. We are willing to live and die with Yu State. Live and die with them. The king of Yu State smiled. Fortunately, the ministers of Yu State have more backbone than the ministers of Chu State. Don't worry, even if the sky falls, I will support it. At this moment, a guard suddenly ran into the imperial palace, reporting to the king, Yi Xian is here. He has killed more than 100 people? Yi Xian. The expressions of all the ministers instantly changed when they heard this. The king of Yu State spoke indifferently, send down the order. Don't resist and let him in. The guard was slightly hesitant. The king of Yu State smiled, do as I say. The guard hesitated for a moment, and then he turned around and left. A short moment later, Yi Xian walked into the imperial palace with a sword in his hand, and the sword in his hand was still bleeding. Everyone present was looking at Yi Xian, the youngest sword master in the Azure Prefecture. The king of Yu State sized up Yi Xian and smiled, as expected of the youngest sword master in the Azure Prefecture. The elegance of a swordsman is obvious. Yi Xian stopped moving. Right at this moment, a man suddenly appeared outside the imperial palace. The man was around the age of 20, wore a white robe, and had a similar appearance to the king of Yu State. There was a young man behind the man. The young man wore green clothes and held a jade pendant in his hand. The white-robed man walked over to the king of Yu State and bowed deeply, Imperial Father. The king of Yu State frowned and said angrily, what are you doing back here? Who notified you? The man shook his head, how can I not return when my country is in trouble? As he spoke, he turned around and gazed at the green-clothed man who stood nearby. The green-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian. You're from the Azure Prefecture's Zhonglan Academy? Yi Xian nodded. The green-clothed man withdrew a command token. Do you recognize this? The Zhonglan token. Yi Xian frowned. The green-clothed man walked over to Yi Xian with a rather arrogant expression. I'm the head disciple of the outer court of Zhonglan Academy in the Central Divine Prefecture. Now, I order you to leave the state of Yu State immediately. You. The green-clothed man's voice stopped abruptly, because a sword was pressed against the center of the green-clothed man's forehead. Everyone here was stunned. Yi Xian shook his head. Head disciple? I'm even the dean. Am I too arrogant? P.S. It's all out. He had only returned to Beijing yesterday, and it was already night time when he returned. I wrote until 4 in the morning. Of course, compared to before, the outburst this time is much smaller, only 6 chapters. However, during this period of time, I really have no other choice. I've really tried my best. You can scold me all you want, as long as you don't involve my family really. Also, for the next few days, there will be double monthly votes. Voting for 1 monthly vote is equivalent to voting for 2. Please support me. End of this chapter. Chapter 175. It was deathly silent in the hall. Everyone was stunned. He didn't even give face to Zhonglan Academy's General Institute? Wasn't Yi Xian from Zhonglan Academy? Everyone was completely dumbfounded. It wasn't just them, even the azure-clothed man and the white-robed man were dumbfounded. He was the crown prince of the Chu kingdom who'd always been gaining experience outside. He'd made a trip to the divine central continent and gotten to know this azure-clothed man. The Yu kingdom was in trouble this time, and since Yi Xian was from Zhonglan Academy, he'd specially invited this azure-clothed man. Yi Xian was from Zhonglan Academy, so he had to give face to Zhonglan Academy of the divine central continent, right? However, he realized that he'd made the wrong decision. The azure-clothed man stood before Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian in horror. Even though Yi Xian had taken him by surprise and caught him off guard, he shouldn't have been unable to fight back. There was only one possibility, and that was that Yi Xian's strength far surpassed his. When he thought up to this point, the azure-clothed man put away his contempt and arrogance and said in a low voice, "We're both students of Zhonglan Academy." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm from Zhonglan Academy, but it's different from your Zhonglan Academy. This matter is between me and the Yu kingdom. Don't speak out of turn, understand?" The azure-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian. "You don't recognize the General Institute." Yi Xian chuckled. "It was the General Institute that didn't recognize us first." The azure-clothed man wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly thrust his sword forward. The sword pierced half an inch into the azure-clothed man's forehead, and blood flowed out. The azure-clothed man's pupils constricted, and he was extremely shocked. Yi Xian grinned. "I'll kill you if you say another word." The azure-clothed man took a deep look at Yi Xian, and then he turned and left. He hadn't said a single word, and he didn't dare say anything harsh, because he'd realized that Yi Xian really dared to kill him. Under such circumstances, saying anything harsh was undoubtedly an extremely stupid thing to do. Seeing that the green-robed man was about to leave, the white-robed man was shocked and hurriedly chased after him. "Brother Gu!" The green-robed man stopped. "I'm sorry, I can't do anything." With that, he quickly disappeared into the distance. Peace was restored in the hall. Yi Xian turned and walked towards the Yu country's monarch. At this moment, some of the Yu country's ministers suddenly appeared in front of the Yu country's monarch. In the beginning, there were only a few of them, but soon, more and more of them appeared in front of Yi Xian. In the eyes of the minister, there was fear and dread, but there was also the look of facing death with equanimity. In the territory of the Qing province, no one in the Dharma realm could stop Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought for a moment before looking at the king of Yu and saying, "You don't look like a fool. Why did you start this war?" The Yu country's monarch stood up and walked towards Yi Xian. At this moment, the white-robed man hastily stood in front of him. "Imperial father." The Yu country's monarch shook his head. He walked past the white-robed man and arrived in front of Yi Xian. "My Yu country doesn't have the strength to reject Kuraki College and Great Cloud Empire. Of course, it's also because of my greed. If we won the war and devoured Jiang country, our country's strength would surely increase greatly. Unfortunately, I didn't take you into account." Yi Xian nodded. "Are you ready to pay the price?" Yi Xian. Behind the king of Yu country, the white-robed man suddenly rushed in front of Yi Xian. He glared at Yi Xian. "Don't go too far. Even if my Yu country dies, we—" All of a sudden, Yi Xian thrust his sword at the white-robed man's throat. At this moment, countless Yu country soldiers rushed in. The main hall was instantly filled to the brim. Not only the main hall, but even the outside of the main hall was filled with Yu soldiers. A war was about to break out. Yi Xian suddenly pointed to the left with his left hand. Two flying swords slashed out side by side. About 3 meters away, the heads of over 20 Yu country's soldiers flew off. In the next instant, his left hand made a slash to his back. The two flying swords shuttled past. Behind Yi Xian, over 20 soldiers fell to the ground without any warning. The spectators were still in a daze. When Yi Xian was about to continue his attack, the Yu country's monarch suddenly said, "My Chu country admits defeat." As soon as the Yu country's monarch's voice faded, the two flying swords stopped at the throats of 2 Yu country soldiers. A thin layer of skin had been cut open. Cold sweat trickled down the foreheads of the 2 soldiers. If the Yu country's monarch spoke a little later, their heads would have flown off. Yi Xian lightly hooked his left hand, and the 2 swords flew back to his side. He faced the king of Yu. "I believe you should already know the conditions I set out in Chu. Do you have any objections?" Just as the king of Chu was about to speak, the white-robed man whom Yi Xian had pointed his sword at wanted to speak first. However, just as he opened his mouth, Yi Xian's sword had already pierced half an inch into his mouth. The space between the white-robed man's brows split open and blood seeped out slowly. Yi Xian grinned. "One more time. His head will fall off." The white-robed man glared at Yi Xian. Clearly, he didn't want to admit defeat and was about to speak. At this moment, the Yu king suddenly pulled the white-robed man back and slapped him across the face. The slap was loud and clear. The king of Yu coldly looked at the white-robed man. "Is there any meaning in trying to be brave at this time?" The white-robed man's expression was somewhat malevolent. "My Yu nation has so many soldiers, why do we need to fear him? Why not give it a try?" The king of Yu shook his head, and his eyes were filled with disappointment. Was Yi Xian really alone? If Yi Xian was alone, the Yu nation wouldn't be afraid, even if he was a sword master. However, Yi Xian wasn't alone. He had a sword immortal behind him, the Jiang country, the drunken immortal in the Ning country. Once an all-out war broke out, The Chu country wouldn't be able to resist without Kuraki College, Dark World, and the Great Cloud Empire's support. The king of Chu couldn't see this point, but Chu Chaohan understood it. Therefore, she allowed Yi Xian to demand without restraint. At this moment, if the Yu nation were to make a move, the Yu nation would undoubtedly be annihilated. The king of Yu suddenly said, "From this moment onwards, the crown prince will be stripped of his title. The crown prince will be succeeded by the third prince, Yu Ming. Senior Mo Yen will be the grand tutor and prime minister." The white-robed man was dumbfounded. "Imperial father." The king of Yu state gently waved his hand, and a 10,000 laws realm expert appeared in front of the white-robed man. The white-robed man wanted to say something, but the 10,000 laws realm expert sighed. "Crown Prince, the king doesn't want you to die." After speaking, he grabbed the white-robed man's shoulder and disappeared from the hall. However, the Yu nation soldiers didn't retreat. They still surrounded Yi Xian, but no one dared to make a move. The king of Yu looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. "The Jiang country is fortunate to have a talent like you." Yi Xian didn't say anything. The king of Yu smiled. "One last question. Are your next targets Kuraki College, Dark World, or the Great Cloud Empire?" Yi Xian nodded. The king of Yu laughed. Finally, he turned around and walked back to the dragon throne. He sat down and in the next moment, he drew a golden dagger from his waist and slit his throat. Blood splattered. Below, Yi Xian turned around and left. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version website. Chapter 176. The king of Yu must die. This was Yi Xian's stance. The Yu and Chu kingdoms had waged war against the Jiang kingdom, and countless soldiers of the Jiang kingdom had died in battle. The two kingdoms must pay the price. Yi Xian walked out of the main hall and headed straight for the Yu kingdom's treasury. The main hall was filled with wails of grief. An hour later, Yi Xian left the Yu kingdom's imperial palace. This time, Yi Xian didn't choose to leave on Black Wolf. Instead, he took the drunken Immortal In's cloud ship because he could check his treasures on the cloud ship. As for Kuraki Academy and the Great Cloud Empire in the Central Plains, he naturally wouldn't go there to throw his life away. The Jiang kingdom might have won, but Kuraki Academy and the Dark World hadn't suffered much damage. Especially the Great Cloud Empire, whose overall strength was still there. He had to take it slow. His top priority now was to improve his strength and the strength of those around him. Moreover, he had to establish the Dao soldiers of Kuraki Academy. Yi Xian was the only guest on the entire cloud ship. This was a convenience that the drunken Immortal In had given him. In a luxurious private room, Yi Xian was sitting on the floor. At the moment he was checking his treasures. He had obtained a lot of things after looting the Chu and Yu kingdoms. Among them, there were 1.4 billion gold coins. Including his own, he now had almost 1.6 billion gold coins. Apart from gold coins, there were more than 2 million supreme-grade spirit stones and 12 jade-grade spirit stones. Among them, there were a total of 25 earth-rank cultivation techniques, martial techniques, and movement techniques. In addition to the ones he'd accumulated in the past, he had around 35 in total. As for the supreme-grade spiritual weapons, he had obtained a total of 36 this time. In addition to his previous savings, he now had 85 supreme-grade spiritual weapons. Apart from that, there were also light-grade spirit weapons, but not many, only about 6. This time, he was lucky because there were 2 swords among them. Swords. Yi Xian brought the 2 swords in front of him. The 2 swords were different from the swift shadow sword. One of the swords was wider, and there was a lightning-like pattern on the blade. The hilt was pitch black, and it felt bone-chilling to the touch. The other sword was thinner, slightly longer, and both sides of the blade gave off a chilly glow. 2 light-grade low-grade swords. Devour? Yi Xian didn't hesitate and directly devoured it. As soon as the 2 swords entered his body, they turned into countless streams of energy and dispersed towards Yi Xian's limbs and bones, nether passage realm. With his current strength, he wasn't strong enough to fight against the 10,000 laws boundary. However, if he reached the divine combination realm, he would be able to fight against the 10,000 laws boundary. Even if he couldn't win, he wouldn't be unable to fight back. If he were to face tens of thousands of Dharma state experts right now, he would definitely be beaten up. He had to reach the divine unity realm. As for the two swift shadow swords, he did not devour them because they were extremely useful to him now. They were not any weaker than the exquisite spirit sword. Now that he was facing an enemy, the two flying swords were very lethal. The two swords could be kept. Moreover, with his current wealth, he was entirely capable of finding even more swords from the immortal indulgence in the future. Inside the cloud ship, Xian was frantically devouring the energy within the bright stage. His aura was also growing, and the spirit elegant sword in his body was also trembling slightly as it continuously absorbed the energy. Outside, what Xian had done in Chu and Yu had quickly spread throughout the entire Qing province. Now, Xian's reputation was like the sun at high noon in the entire Qing province. And in Jiang country, Xian's reputation had reached its peak. Every day, countless people would come to the foot of the mountain of Azure Billows Academy. Some wanted to enter Azure Billows Academy, while others wanted to meet Xian. As for Dark World, Kuraki Academy, and Great Cloud Empire, ever since the battle at Mizar City, these three forces had not made any moves. One day later, the cloud ship arrived at Jiang country. After the cloud ship stopped, Xian did not leave the ship. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. On the deck of the cloud ship, two delicate and pretty ladies were whispering. I saw that swordsman yesterday. How did he look? Very handsome. Even if he didn't come out after entering the box, we can't go in, sigh. Wow, look at your infatuated look. He's the sword master. Don't think too much. So what if he's the sword master? Why don't we drug him? Aya, you damned girl, don't you have any shame? Cough. A light cough came from behind the two ladies. The two ladies turned around and were shocked to see the person who came. In an instant, their faces turned red like the rosy clouds in the sky. They were extremely shy. The person who came was Xian. Xian walked down the ship. Just as he was about to disembark, he looked up at the sky with a face full of worry. Being too handsome is also a kind of trouble. After saying that, he jumped off the cloud ship. On the deck, the two ladies covered their faces in embarrassment. After Xian got off the ship, he went straight to Azure Billows Academy. He was still in the Nether Passage realm. Devouring the two swords did not help him reach the Divine Unity realm, nor did it help the Spirit Elegant sword. This made him quite disappointed. At the same time, he also realized that after he reached the Nether Passage realm, his requirements for swords were getting higher and higher, especially the Spirit Elegant sword. In order to reach the Truth middle grade, he had to devour countless bright grade swords. At first, he thought that it would be at most 4 or 5, but now it seemed that he was too naive. If he and the Spirit Elegant sword wanted to improve further, they would probably need at least 10 bright grade swords, or even more. At the thought of this, Xian suddenly felt that he was very poor again. Not long after, Xian entered the city. At this moment, the imperial capital was in a state of jubilation. The state of Jiang had won. When the armies of the state of Chu, state of Yu, Kuraki Academy, and the Great Cloud Empire pressed down, the people of the state of Jiang were naturally terrified. Because if the state of Jiang perished, they would become slaves and their fates would be very tragic. And the state of Jiang had won. Looking at the jubilant people in the city, a smile appeared on Xian's face. Protect the country? He did not think too much. He only knew that he, the soldiers of the state of Jiang, and the students of the Azure Billows Academy had fought to the death in Mizar City, allowing many people to survive. Responsibility. When he was young, his mother suddenly ran away. At that moment, looking at his petite sister, he felt a sense of responsibility for the first time. He had to protect his sister well. This was the responsibility of an elder brother. When he grew up as the heir of the Yi family, he had an additional responsibility at that moment. To seek benefits for the family, to fight for the family. Although the family later abandoned him and his sister, he had never let down the Yi family. And now he was the dean of the Azure Billows Academy, the state scholar of the state of Yi, and the big brother of Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi, the responsibility had always been there, and it was getting bigger and bigger. And as a man, he should shoulder the responsibility that belonged to him. Tired? Yes, he would be very tired. But if he did not have a good family and a good father, if he was not tired, then he could only be a good-for-nothing. Thinking of this, suddenly, a sword intent emitted from Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian was stunned. This sword intent came out on its own. This sword intent has its own consciousness? Yi Xian was shocked by his own thoughts. Another thing was, since it was the good and evil sword intent, which meant that there was a good side, then there must be an evil side. But what about the evil side? What was the power of the evil thought sword intent? This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian was a little curious. Are you state scholar Yi? At this moment, a voice suddenly came from beside Yi Xian's ears. Yi Xian stopped and turned around. On his right, stood a lady holding a flower butterfly umbrella. The lady was beautiful and had an excellent figure. At this moment, the lady was sizing him up, her eyes filled with suspicion. As the lady's voice fell, the surrounding people also looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said seriously, I am not state scholar Yi. State scholar Yi is handsome, dignified, talented, and elegant. His handsomeness is indescribable. How can I be state scholar Yi? I am not even 1/10,000th of him. The lady, after saying that, Yi Xian did not blush or pant. He turned around and walked into the distance. At this moment, the lady suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side. She took out a portrait. In the portrait, it was Yi Xian. The lady looked at the portrait, then turned to look at Yi Xian. She said softly, very similar. Yi Xian. At this moment, the lady suddenly stood in front of Yi Xian. She stared straight at Yi Xian. Are you? Yi Xian was a little helpless. What are you trying to do? Hearing Yi Xian's words, the lady's eyes lit up. You really are. As she said that, the umbrella in her hand suddenly closed. In the next moment, the umbrella in her hand was pointed at Yi Xian's forehead. Sword force. Sword intent. A grandmaster of the sword Dao. Yi Xian was shocked. This lady is actually a grandmaster of the sword Dao. Moreover, the umbrella in her hand is actually a sword at the true grade. No, it should be called an umbrella sword. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it. A sword intent suddenly blocked in front of him. Kindness sword intent. The kindness sword intent formed a thick shield that forcefully blocked the lady's umbrella sword. There was a trace of surprise in the lady's eyes when she saw Yi Xian's sword intent. What a strange sword intent. I've never seen it before. As soon as she said that, her lily-white hand spun lightly. The umbrella sword suddenly unfolded. Bang! Yi Xian was instantly blasted 30 meters away. But in the next moment, a flying sword pierced the lady's umbrella sword. Bang! The lady retreated repeatedly. This time, she retreated over 60 meters. After the lady stopped, she looked up at Yi Xian. There was a trace of excitement in her eyes. Sword master. You've really become a sword master. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. You were sent here by Kuraki Academy? The lady was slightly stunned, and then she shook her head. I'm Jian Chuchu from the Jian clan. My younger brother is Jian Xiaowang. You should know him, right? Jian Xiaowang? Yi Xian was stunned. He naturally knew her, because Jian Xiaowang and Gong Qingqing had helped him in the Ning Kingdom's secret realm. Jian Chuchu sized Yi Xian up and said, I was about to head to the Central Divine Prefecture, but I suddenly heard that you've become a sword master. So, I came to have a spar with you. You're very formidable, and I might not be able to defeat you now. Yi Xian smiled. You're not bad as well. Jian Chuchu walked over to Yi Xian and asked curiously, How did you become a sword master? Can you share your experience with me? Yi Xian was stunned. This fellow is asking me so openly? Isn't she afraid at all? Jian Chuchu blinked. Can I? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, Why don't you join my Azure Billow Academy? We can have an exchange in the Sword Dao in the future. What do you think? Jian Chuchu didn't even think about it and immediately nodded. Alright. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. I've just returned to Beijing. After I catch my breath, I'll wait until midnight. Does anyone have any objections? Alright. Thank you very much for your understanding. I love all of you. End of this chapter. Chapter 177. Great. Yi Xian was stunned. She agreed just like that? Yi Xian wanted to confirm it, so he asked, "Are you willing to join Songlan Academy?" Jian Chuchu nodded, "Yes. You are so powerful, I should be able to gain a lot by following you. However, if I am stronger than you one day, I will have to leave." Yi Xian smiled, "Sure. Let's go back to Songlan Academy with me." Just like that, Songlan Academy had one more Sword Dao Grandmaster student. Of course, Yi Xian was very happy. Sword Dao Grandmaster. Moreover, from his previous exchange with Jian Chuchu, she was already at the peak of Sword Dao Grandmaster and could reach Sword Master at any time. If Jian Chuchu reached Sword Master, Songlan Academy would have one more super warrior. After Yi Xian brought Jian Chuchu back to Songlan Academy, he immediately gathered all the students. There were less than 30 students left in Songlan Academy. However, after the battle at Mizar City, they had matured a lot. In front of Songlan Palace, Yi Xian faced everyone. On his left and right were Bai Zhe, Mo Yunqi, Ji Anji and Jian Chuchu who had just joined Songlan Academy. Yi Xian walked in front of the students. "Stay alive, okay?" Everyone was stunned. They didn't understand Yi Xian's meaning. Yi Xian said softly, "Many of our brothers died in Mizar City." Everyone was silent. Yi Xian said, "One of my brothers once said, if you are not strong enough, you will be beaten to death. That is what we deserve. Let me say this to all of you. This world isn't so beautiful, it is very cruel. If you are strong, it means you have a better chance of survival. From now on, all of you will double your daily cultivation." As he spoke, he opened his right hand and a bright grade spiritual artifact appeared in his hand. At the sight of this bright rank spirit weapon, many of the students were stunned. Yi Xian said, "Do you want it?" Everyone nodded. Yi Xian said, "Do you want it?" "Sure, whoever reaches Divine Unity Realm first will have it." Divine Combination Realm. The expressions of some people instantly turned bitter. Because among them, there were some who were only in the Levitation Realm. At this time, Yi Xian continued, "In addition to this, there will be an additional rule. There will be a test every month, and the top 3 will be rewarded with an Earth rank martial technique and cultivation technique. The first place will also be rewarded with an additional top-grade spirit weapon. As for the last person, he will be expelled from Songlan Academy." When they heard Yi Xian's words, everyone present was stunned. Mo Yunqi's group of 3 looked at Yi Xian as well. Expulsion from school? This was a very serious matter. Yi Xian said indifferently, "There are rewards and punishments. What I said just now will be implemented from this moment on. Now dismiss." The expressions of all the students instantly became solemn when they heard this. Expulsion from school. Right now, the people of Jiang country were proud to be a student of Songlan Academy. If they were expelled, it would mean that all the glory would vanish into thin air. No one wanted to leave. In an instant, the hearts of all the students of Songlan Academy had tightened. After the students dispersed, Mo Yunqi walked over to Yi Xian's side and said softly, "Bandit Yi, isn't this too cruel?" Yi Xian shook his head. "You've seen the Dao soldiers of Kuraki Academy, the 9th Mercenary Group, and the Black Flame Army of the Great Cloud Empire. How do you think our students compare to them?" Mo Yunqi fell silent. Because there was no comparison at all. Yi Xian said softly, "If we don't be cruel to them today, then our enemies will be even more cruel to them in the future. As for the 3 of you, Senior Mo, Senior Bai, and Senior Anji, your strengths aren't sufficient, and there's quite a gap between you and the true monstrous geniuses of the Central Divine Prefecture. Work hard. I'll do my best to get all the resources all of you need. I only hope that when we look back in a very, very long time from now, all of our brothers will still be here." This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Mo Yunqi's group of 3 remained silent. All of them had attained the divine combination realm, and Xianxia was at the divine combination realm as well. However, this was utterly insufficient. There was a difference in strength amongst the divine combination realm as well. The 3 of them really weren't very strong when it came to defeating the central divine prefecture. A short moment later, Mo Yunqi spoke abruptly, "Let's double our cultivation as well." Bai Zhe nodded. Xianxia just gnawed on his steamed bun and didn't say anything. Jian Chuchu spoke abruptly, "The Great Cloud Empire is very formidable." The 3 of them gazed at Jian Chuchu, and then she spoke in a serious tone, "I made some calculations just now. If Azure Billow Academy were to fight the Great Cloud Empire head-on, then Azure Billow Academy wouldn't have any chance of winning. Right? It seems like all of you have 2 more enemies, Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. If these 2 powers join the battle as well, then your chances of winning will be negative." Mo Yunqi spoke with slight displeasure, "We won just now." Jian Chuchu gazed at Mo Yunqi with slight pity, "You're so stupid." Mo Yunqi almost went berserk. Jian Chuchu said, "If Yi Xian attains the divine combination realm, then it means that a Dharma realm expert will appear in the central divine prefecture." The expressions of Mo Yunqi's group instantly changed when they heard Jian Chuchu. They'd actually forgotten that. The Dharma realm. If Yi Xian's strength improved, then it meant that Kuraki Academy and the Dark World could dispatch Dharma realm experts. At that time, how could Azure Billow Academy resist the Dharma realm experts? After a while, the 3 of them turned and left. Cultivation. Cultivation that risked one's life. Whether it was the state of Jiang or Azure Billow Academy, they hadn't won yet. To put it more seriously, this was just the beginning. Because the Dharma realm was the core combat power of these powers. Yi Xian arrived at the Martyr's Palace. He sat on the ground, and after a long silence, he suddenly spoke softly, "Old Ji, Azure Billow Academy is getting better and better. Don't worry, I'll lead everyone to better things. I'll also let Azure Billow Academy of the Central Divine Prefecture know that our state of Zhang's Azure Billow Academy isn't inferior to them at all." The Martyr's Palace was brightly lit, and only Yi Xian's murmur could be heard. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian lay down in the palace and fell asleep. Early in the morning, a red sun slowly rose from the horizon, and all things awakened. Yi Xian had woken up. At this moment, a thick blanket had appeared on his body, and it even carried a faint fragrance. Yi Xian smiled slightly, folded the blanket, and put it aside. Then he walked out of the Martyr's Palace. Sunlight shone down, and Yi Xian stretched lazily. He said with a smile, "Everything is so familiar." Yi Xian suddenly turned his head to look. In the distance, Jiang Jiao was walking toward him. He was still dressed in silver armor, and he was still as good-looking as ever. Jiang Jiao walked up to Yi Xian. "I've already chosen the people." Yi Xian nodded. "Take me to them." Jiang Jiao turned around and led Yi Xian to an open space. There were 70 or so people standing in front of Yi Xian. The oldest was in his 30s, and the youngest was in his 20s. All 70 people exuded a murderous aura. One look and one could tell that they were battle-hardened warriors. When they saw Yi Xian, the 70 people knelt on one knee. "Greetings, State Scholar Yi." The 70 people looked excited. They respected Yi Xian from the bottom of their hearts. At the side, Jiang Jiao sighed with emotion. Fortunately, Yi Xian had no evil intentions. Otherwise, it would be a piece of cake for him to topple the Jiang country's imperial family. Yi Xian's prestige in the Jiang country had already surpassed the Jiang country's imperial family. Not far away, Yi Xian said, "Rise?" The 70 people stood up and looked at Yi Xian with a trace of excitement in their eyes. Yi Xian said softly, "From now on, you are students of my Azure Billow Academy. If you are unwilling, you can step forward. I won't force you." Not a single person stepped forward. Yi Xian nodded slightly. "This chapter is not over. Please continue." He nodded slightly. "From now on, I will give you the best resources and the best equipment. I will make you the most elite Dao soldiers in the Azure Prefecture. Of course, The training you will undergo will be cruel, extremely cruel. Moreover, there will be an assessment every month. The bottom 3 will be directly eliminated. Directly eliminated. Everyone's expression gradually turned solemn. Yi Xian turned to Jiangjiu. Every month, I need 3 more soldiers to replace those who are eliminated. Jiangjiu nodded. Alright. Yi Xian said again, they will be released from the military. In the future, they may only listen to my orders. Jiangjiu looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian said, is that all right? Jiangjiu was still silent. Yi Xian did not speak either. After a moment, Jiangjiu said, you don't trust us? Yi Xian shook his head. I have my own selfish motives. This Dao soldier is the foundation of my Azure Billow Academy. I want to control it. If you don't agree, I will look for someone else. After this cavalry was trained, it would definitely be very terrifying in the future. He did not want this cavalry to fall into the hands of others. This was what he prepared for Azure Billow Academy. Jiangjiu said indifferently, don't worry. We will not touch this cavalry. After speaking, she turned and left. There was a trace of self-ridicule on the corners of her mouth. Yi Xian suddenly appeared before Jiangjiu. Jiangjiu looked at Yi Xian with a rather cold expression. What? Yi Xian said in a light voice, are you angry? Jiangjiu nodded. I am unhappy in my heart. She was unhappy not because Jiang country could not touch this Dao soldier, but because she felt that Yi Xian did not trust her. Yi Xian smiled lightly. I hope that you will lead this cavalry in the future. Jiangjiu was stunned. Yi Xian said in a light voice, Little Jiu, I do not want your imperial family to touch this cavalry. Because if you let them touch it, the purpose of this cavalry's existence might change. To put it bluntly, even if I am no longer around, Azure Billow Academy must have the strength to protect itself. And you, I trust you. Jiangjiu went silent for a moment and said, don't worry. This cavalry only belongs to Azure Billow Academy. It will not belong to Jiang country's imperial family. Jiang country's imperial family does not have the qualifications to touch this cavalry. But if Jiang country is in trouble in the future, I hope that this cavalry will be able to defend Jiang country. Yi Xian nodded. Of course. But if Jiang country's imperial family is in internal strife, then they will absolutely not participate. Jiangjiu gazed at Yi Xian. With both of us here, there won't be any chaos. Yi Xian smiled. That's true. Jiangjiu spoke in a low voice. I will be training this cavalry from now on. Who do you intend to train them? Yi Xian smiled. I already have someone in mind. Yi Xian and Jiangjiu sat on chairs within a hall, and Feng Lan, Mo Yuan, and Lu Jiuge were standing before them. After a long time, Mo Yuan suddenly said, You want the 3 of us to train this Dao soldier for you? Yi Xian nodded. Mo Yuan spoke in a low voice. Do you know that training a Dao soldier requires a huge amount of money? Yi Xian replied, I know. I'll deal with the money. Mo Yuan and Feng Lan gazed at Lu Jiuge because she was from the school of the militarist. Lu Jiuge pondered deeply for a moment, and then she gazed at Yi Xian. I will let them cultivate a cultivation technique called the murderous energy technique. This cultivation technique is suitable for soldiers to cultivate, but it's extremely expensive. Just cultivating this cultivation technique for a single soldier would cost at least 50 million gold coins, and that's in addition to everything else. Yi Xian almost fainted when he heard that. 50 million. Meanwhile, Lu Jiuge said, however, in the future, they will be one of the most terrifying Dao soldiers in the Azure continent. Of course, the precondition is that you're willing to spend the money. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he gritted his teeth. Let's do it. End of this chapter. Chapter 178. Let's do it. Yi Xian knew that Songlan Academy's current strength was insufficient and had to improve. It was impossible for them to improve slowly because Kuraki Academy, Great Cloud Empire, and Dark World wouldn't give them the chance to develop slowly. If they wanted to develop, they could only develop quickly. And rapid development required money. Lots and lots of money. Fortunately, he had already prepared the equipment for this Dao soldier. Otherwise, he would not be able to establish this Dao soldier. Even if he could establish it, it would be a mediocre one. Even so, he was still panicking, because this cavalry would consume a lot of money. No, it would burn money. Jiang Jiu also had a grave expression. Even if the state of Jiang exhausted all its resources, it might not be able to support this cavalry. And Yi Xian had to support a group of Zhonglan Academy students. He couldn't rob them every day, right? Lu Jioga glanced at Yi Xian. Zhonglan Academy must make a profit. Yi Xian faced Lu Jioga, and Lu Jioga said indifferently, "You want to support an academy by yourself? That is not realistic, and you can't do that. Zhonglan Academy is now a major faction in the state of Jiang and can make a profit." Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "How do we make a profit?" Lu Jioga thought about it and said, "Think about it yourself." Yi Xian, "Profit." After the meeting, Yi Xian brought Jiang Jiu to Zhonglan Palace. Mo Yunqi and the others were there. They were discussing how to make a profit. If Yi Xian was to bear the burden of the entire Zhonglan Academy, it would be impossible. They must make a profit. After discussing for a while, Jian Chuchu suddenly said, "Isn't this a very simple matter?" The crowd looked at Jian Chuchu. Jian Chuchu blinked her eyes and said, "First, we can collect tuition fees. We can collect tuition fees from the students, including their daily living expenses. Of course, we can waive the tuition fees for those who are poor, but we can't waive the tuition fees for those who have mines." Saying that, she raised 2 fingers. Second, open up the Zhonglan Academy. The people of Jiang country, as long as they have the money, they can enter the academy to visit, and even watch the students cultivate. Apart from that, Zhonglan Academy's rear mountain is so big that it can be developed properly. Let's see if we can discover the existence of any spirit mine or the like. If there is, then Zhonglan Academy will be rich. Finished speaking, she raised another finger. Thirdly, even if there isn't any at the back of the mountain, we can let the students of Zhonglan Academy search everywhere, go to those ownerless, boundless mountain ranges to search. Once they find one, they can immediately occupy it and send people to excavate it. At this point, she stopped. Yi Xian quickly said, "Go on, go on." Jian Chuchu glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "We can let the academy's students form teams to go down the mountain to gain experience. They can accept some mercenary missions and earn some cultivation fees. Firstly, they can train themselves. Secondly, they can increase the reputation of the Azure Billow Academy." Yi Xian nodded. Continue. Jian Chuchu's lips curled up slightly. "Do you know what makes the aristocratic families and the major forces the most?" Everyone shook their heads. The few of them were very ignorant. Although Jiang Jiu was the princess of the country of Jiang, she spent most of her time in the military camp and rarely understood these things. Jian Chuchu glanced at them and said seriously, "It's to collect protection fees." "Everyone," Jian Chuchu said, "we can collect a certain amount of protection fees from those aristocratic families and the major forces." Jiang Jiu frowned. "That's not good, right?" This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian also nodded. "It doesn't seem good." Jian Chuchu said, "Do you think it's bullying the weak?" Yi Xian and the others nodded. Jian Chuchu rolled her eyes. "All right, let's change the method. You can work with them. Every year, as long as they pay a certain amount of money, you can let their disciples come to Zhonglan Academy to study. Of course, they won't be official students. They are just here to learn. If they perform well and are outstanding, Zhonglan Academy can turn them into official students. If you do this, those aristocratic families and the major forces will be very willing." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he looked at Mo Yunqi and the others. "What do all of you think?" Mo Yunqi thought for a moment, and then he said, "It's not impossible, but you have to control the degree. Otherwise, it might destroy the reputation of our Zhonglan Academy." Jian Chuchu nodded. "You have to control the degree. You can't be insatiably greedy. Moreover, you have to control the quota every year. There can't be too many. Only then will it seem precious." Yi Xian suddenly turned to Jian Chuchu. I'll appoint you as the chief treasurer of Tsang Lan Academy. You'll be in charge of all these things. How about it? Jian Chuchu blinked. Chief treasurer? Yi Xian nodded. You'll be in charge of keeping the money we earn. Of course, if Tsang Lan Academy needs it, you'll have to use it. Understand? Jian Chuchu thought for a moment, and then she said, Are there any benefits? Yi Xian nodded. I'll spar with you and share my insights in the Sword Dao with you. Besides that, you'll get 10% of the money you earn every year. How about it? 10%. Jian Chuchu's eyes instantly lit up. She could already see a lot of money waving at her. Yi Xian still wanted to say something. However, Jian Chuchu suddenly slammed her palm on the table. Let's do it. Everyone was speechless. Just like that, Tsang Lan Academy had another chief treasurer. Yi Xian turned to Ji Anji. Anji, you'll be in charge of the internal affairs. You can recruit people. You'll be in charge of all the internal affairs of Tsang Lan Academy. Of course, don't forget to cultivate. Ji Anji nodded. Okay. Yi Xian asked again. If there's any difficulty, you have to tell me at any time. Understand? Ji Anji nodded again. Okay. What about me and Bai Zhe? Mo Yunqi suddenly asked. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, Old Mo, the two of you will form a small team. The main mission of this small team is to search for talents all over Qingzhou. Look for those especially outstanding talents. If you find them and they're willing, you can recruit them into Tsang Lan Academy. Talents. If Tsang Lan Academy wanted to grow stronger, besides improving his own strength, he also needed more talents. He might be strong, but it didn't mean that the entire Tsang Lan Academy was strong. What he wanted to do was that even if he, Yi Xian, was not around in the future, Tsang Lan Academy would still be strong. After the meeting was dismissed, everyone started to act. For Tsang Lan Academy, time was life now. They couldn't waste any of it. Because no one knew when Kuraki Academy, Great Cloud Empire, and Dark World would launch an attack. Yi Xian left Tsang Lan Academy and arrived at Drunken Immortal Inn. Fifth floor master personally welcomed him. Looking at Yi Xian, the fifth building master said with a smile, My young friend, congratulations. Congratulations? Yi Xian was stunned. Fifth floor master said, defeating Great Cloud Empire, Kuraki Academy, and Dark World. Yi Xian shook his head. Senior should know that they didn't lose. Tsang Lan Academy and Jiang Country didn't win either. Fifth floor master glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, Old man is relieved that young friend can understand this. Yi Xian said, Senior, for the next period of time. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. During this period, Tsang Lan Academy might have a large number of things to purchase from Drunken Immortal Inn. A lot. Fifth floor master pondered for a moment and said, Young friend, don't worry. I will mobilize all the resources in Azure Province to satisfy young friend. Moreover, we will give young friend the best price. The higher-ups have already said that we won't profit from doing business with young friend. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Many thanks. This gratitude came from the bottom of his heart. Without Drunken Immortal in support, Tsang Lan Academy's development speed would be much slower. Even if they had money, it would still be slower. Fifth floor master smiled. Young friend, you are too polite. Yi Xian said, Senior, there is one more thing. Are there any movements from Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and Great Cloud Empire? Fifth floor master shook his head. After the incident at Mizar City, Drunken Immortal Inn sent people to investigate. However, there was no news. However, we can be sure that they won't leave the matter at that. Now that it has come to this, they won't rest until one side is dead. When he spoke up to this point, he seemed to have thought of something and said solemnly, Young friend, you must not casually attain the divine fusion realm right now. Yi Xian frowned. But Fifth floor master said in a low voice, If you attain the divine fusion realm, then they will be able to dispatch Dharma realm experts. If you don't attain the divine fusion realm now, then they won't dare to dispatch Dharma realm and Dharma controlling realm experts against you. If they don't dispatch Dharma realm and Dharma controlling realm experts, then no one in Azure Province can kill you. The number one expert beneath the Dharma realm. Under the circumstances that Xianxia wasn't here, Yixian was currently the number one expert beneath the Dharma realm in Azure Province. Yixian fell silent. I can't attain the divine fusion realm. After pondering deeply for a moment, Yixian nodded. Alright, I can seize this opportunity to stabilize my cultivation and develop Songlan Academy at the same time. Fifth floor master nodded. Exactly. Young friend, your top priority now is to stabilize your cultivation and improve the overall strength of Songlan Academy. Also, young friend, you have to be wary of the Songlan Academy in the Central Plains. Yixian frowned slightly. Senior, do you mean that they might target Songlan Academy in the state of Jiang? Fifth floor master said, previously, the state of Jiang's Songlan Academy was impoverished, so that Songlan Academy naturally looked down on it. But it's different now. The state of Jiang's Songlan Academy has such ferocious momentum. If it continues to develop like this, it will definitely become a superpower in the future, and they will definitely be jealous. Young friend, you must be careful. Don't let others harvest the fruits of your hard work. Yixian nodded slightly. I understand. It's fine if they don't have such thoughts. If they do, I don't mind having another enemy. Anyway, I already have enough. A few more won't make a difference. Fifth floor master shook his head and smiled bitterly. Yixian suddenly took out a gold card and placed it in front of fifth floor master. Senior, there are 500 million gold coins in this card. I need 5 special flying swords like Phantom Shadow. If there are more, you can keep them for me. Fifth floor master nodded. Alright, I'll handle this matter. Yixian thanked him and bade farewell to fifth floor master. After leaving drunken Immortal Inn, Yixian returned to Songlan Academy. But when he passed by a street, a black-robed elder suddenly blocked his way. He knew this elder. He was the black-robed elder who had been with Xianxia previously. The black-robed elder looked coldly at Yixian. You are extraordinarily lucky, Yixian said. Old man, I advise you to be kind-hearted. The black-robed elder sneered. Kind-hearted? Yixian, don't think that you can be cocky just because you have a sword immortal backing you. Old man, let me tell you. The Yin family is an aristocratic family with 10,000 years of history. Miss Yin has the bloodline of a martial god. A lowly sword immortal is nothing in their eyes. If you approach Miss Yin, you will only be courting your own destruction. P.S. I have let everyone down recently. I am willing to sacrifice my chrysanthemum for this. Come on, be gay. End of this chapter. Chapter 179. A 10,000-year-old family? Yixian frowned. What the hell? The black-robed old man walked in front of Yixian and stared at Yixian. There are many accidents in a person's life. What do you think? As his voice fell, his right hand slowly clenched. A wave of power instantly enveloped Yixian. At this moment, on the right side of the street, an old man had appeared out of nowhere. The old man wore plain clothes and his long hair draped over his shoulders. He had a goatee. Seeing the plain-robed old man, the black-robed old man narrowed his eyes. A moment later, he coldly looked at Yixian and disappeared. The moment the black-robed old man disappeared, the plain-robed old man appeared in front of Yixian. The plain-robed old man sized up Yixian. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes, but this surprise soon turned into a complicated one. Yixian said, Senior is from the Yin family? The plain-robed old man said, Yes. Yixian said seriously, I think I'm quite outstanding. What does Senior think? The plain-robed old man was stunned. In the next instant he shook his head. Your thick skin really surprises the old man, Yixian, the plain-robed old man said. Do you know that my Yin family values not only talent, but also bloodline and background? The battle at our level is not something you can imagine. Between aristocratic families, marriage alliances are common. The young miss is special, very special. The person she chooses can't be an ordinary person. Do you understand? Yixian was silent. He said it very bluntly. The plain-robed old man sized up Yixian. To be honest, you aren't bad. But for my and family, it's not enough. It's far from enough. Because there are many geniuses like you in my and family. As for your background, you don't seem to have any. If we talk about the sword Immortal behind you, forgive the old man for being blunt. My and family has 4 sword immortals. 4 sword immortals. The old man continued, what the old man said today is that I hope you can retreat in the face of difficulties. Don't harm yourself in the future, and don't make things difficult for the young Mississippi. Because in the future, if you can't bear the anger of everyone, she'll be the one to bear it. You're on your own. With that, he turned around and disappeared. On the street, Xian was silent for a long time. In the end, he shook his head and smiled. Xiaoan, I'm under a lot of pressure. With that, he lowered his head and looked at the spirit-elegant sword in his hand. A moment later, he suddenly laughed out loud. To hell with the aristocratic families. I don't have an identity, I don't have an aristocratic family, but I have a sword. With the 3 feet tall mountain in my hands, I can do whatever I want in the 10,000 heavens and 10,000 worlds. Xiaoan, wait for me. As soon as he finished speaking, Xian had already disappeared at the end of the street. Xian did not notice that at the top of the prison pagoda, the leftmost sword trembled slightly, but it quickly returned to normal. After Xian disappeared, a woman suddenly appeared on the street. Her clothes were as white as snow. Xianxia. Looking at Xian's departing figure, the corners of Xianxia's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a charming smile. This smile caused the heavens and the earth to pale in comparison. A moment later, Xianxia said softly, I'll wait for you. With that, she turned around and walked into the distance. Soon, she disappeared into the night. This time, she really left. In the night, a sigh resounded. After Xian returned to Zhonglan Academy, he began to cultivate sword skills. 1 sword to determine life and death, as well as the imperial sword technique that he had researched, especially the imperial sword technique. He realized that there was still a lot of room for development in this imperial sword technique. What he needed to do now was to strengthen this imperial sword technique. He wanted to integrate the 1 sword to determine life and death sword technique into the imperial sword technique. If he succeeded, every flying sword that flew out in the future would be 1 sword to determine life and death. Its power would increase by several times. Apart from that, he also planned to make good use of his battle intent, sword momentum, and sword intent. He was still not proficient in using it, or it could be said that he could do better in all aspects. It was just that he had been too busy before, so he couldn't calm down and properly integrate them. But now, he had time to properly compose himself. Apart from Xian, who was diligently cultivating, everyone in Zhonglan Academy was madly cultivating, especially the students. Because if they couldn't pass the assessment, they would be eliminated. Here, there was glory, cultivation resources, elixirs, martial skills, cultivation techniques. Who wanted to leave? No one wanted to leave, and if they didn't want to leave, they had to cultivate. Cultivate with their lives on the line. One had to know that there were countless people outside who wanted to squeeze in. Only with competition could there be progress. Apart from these students, the 70 soldiers from the state of Jiang that Xian had recruited were also madly cultivating, and their cultivation was rather cruel. These soldiers needed to cultivate the murderous aura technique, and the murderous aura technique required killing intent. In order to train these soldiers' killing intent, Lu Jioge would bring them to a mysterious place that even Xian didn't know about. In any case, every time these soldiers returned, they would be half dead and looked especially miserable. Apart from that, these soldiers usually cultivated inhumanly. Under such intensity, their bodies naturally couldn't bear it. However, Zhonglan Academy was rich. Golden Soar pills, various kinds of great supplement pills, and some elixirs that could strengthen the body, Zhonglan Academy had enough. Moreover, the lowest level of martial skills these soldiers cultivated was Earth rank. Needless to say, the equipment they used was Bright rank. However, Lu Jioge didn't let them use the equipment of the Black Flame Cavalry. If they wanted to use it, they could, but they had to reach her custom-made standards. Only those who passed could use it. These soldiers looked at these bright rank equipment every day, but couldn't use it. How torturous was that? Cultivate. Cultivate with all their might. Most importantly, if they came last in the competition next month, they would be eliminated. Here, the food was the best, the usage was the best, and the cultivation resources were the best. No one wanted to leave. It could be said that almost everyone was cultivating with all their might. Under such circumstances, the growth of these soldiers was extremely terrifying. Other than the cultivation of the students and soldiers, after Jian Chuchu became the chief treasurer of Tsanglan Academy, the entire Tsanglan Academy underwent an earth-shattering change. Every day, many citizens of the imperial capital would enter Tsanglan Academy for a visit. Everyone had to pay a certain amount of gold coins. Actually, it wasn't a lot and everyone could afford it. However, once there were more people, it would be incredible. In just one day, Tsanglan Academy had earned a net profit of 20 million gold coins. And Jian Chuchu directly earned 2 million gold coins. 2 million was very little, but there were other projects, such as the auction of some abandoned land around Tsanglan Academy. Whoever could obtain a piece of land would be able to build a house there, and then they would be neighbors of Tsanglan Academy outside the city. Then, Jian Chuchu sold 5 pieces of land on the first day. They weren't big and each piece was only about 100 square meters. Yet, she sold each piece of land for 30 million gold coins. And the area around Tsanglan Academy was at least tens of thousands of mu. Other than that, there were all sorts of projects. In any case, on the first day, Jian Chuchu received a share of nearly 30 million gold coins. It was only a matter of time before this woman became the richest person in the country of Jiang. Other than that, she also recruited a large number of soldiers and recruited many people. Every day, she would go to the mountains to search for gold and silver mines. After nearly half a month of hard work, she really found a gold mine in the depths of a mountain range that was thousands of miles away from Tsanglan Academy. At this moment, the entire Tsanglan Academy was in an uproar. A gold mine was of great significance to Tsanglan Academy. This was because this gold mine could be mined for at least several hundred million gold coins. Of course, as the one who contributed the most, Jian Chuchu immediately received a reward of several tens of millions. Not only that, Yi Xian also very generously rewarded her with a clear tear spirit artifact, which made her extremely happy. Thus, she hurriedly sent a voice transmission to her younger brother, Jian Xiaowang, to come as well. It should be said that she also called many people from the Jian family. With such a generous reward, Jian Chuchu worked even harder. She even established a small department, a department that belonged solely to her. She recruited nearly 100 people and these people were responsible for all sorts of things. Don't look down on these 100 people, these 100 people were responsible for all of Tsanglan Academy's businesses. Moreover, most of them contacted many aristocratic families in the country of Jiang and negotiated many cooperation conditions with them. For example, these aristocratic families would pay a certain amount of gold coins to allow their disciples to study at Tsanglan Academy. As long as they were outstanding enough, they could become official students of Tsanglan Academy. At first, Yi Xian felt that this would not be very effective because he felt that these aristocratic families were relatively poor. However, he was wrong. Many aristocratic families were not poor at all. Not only were they not poor, but they were also extremely rich. One quota for 30 million gold coins. Tsanglan Academy had reached an agreement with almost 20 aristocratic families. In other words, every year, they could obtain at least 600 million gold coins from these aristocratic families. Of course, it was completely free cooperation. These aristocratic families could stop cooperating with Tsanglan Academy at any time. However, Yi Xian realized that these aristocratic families did not have any intention of severing their cooperation with Tsanglan Academy. This was because after coming to Tsanglan Academy, their status would be different. Especially some outstanding aristocratic families' disciples, they would even become Tsanglan Academy students. Thus, even more aristocratic families came to cooperate with Tsanglan Academy. In a short period of 2 months, Tsanglan Academy had undergone earth-shattering changes. Songlan Academy's influence was growing, and so was its strength. However, Yi Xian was slightly worried. This was because Songlan Academy did not have enough high-end strength. He did not know how strong Lu Jioge, Mo Yuan, and Feng Lan were. Moreover, it was still a question whether these three would fight for Songlan Academy in the future. They were still not strong enough. On this day, the fifth-floor master of the drunken immortal abode came to Songlan Academy. In Yi Xian's room, the fifth-floor master smiled. "Young friend, I have a surprise for you this time." Yi Xian smiled. "Then I am looking forward to it." The fifth-floor master laughed heartily. He took out a box. Inside the box were 5 swords. They were all bright-grade swords. At this moment, the fifth-floor master opened his right hand, and a black square box appeared in his palm. Yi Xian was stunned. "This is..." The fifth-floor master smiled. "A true grade sword box. A sword immortal from the divine central continent auctioned this item to the drunken immortal abode for 2.6 billion gold coins. No, it should be 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Do you want it?" Yi Xian, Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 180. 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. After all, he had only obtained a little over 2 million supreme-grade spirit stones after obtaining the treasuries of the Chu and Yu states. 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones? He wouldn't get anything even if he sold himself. As if he knew what Yi Xian was thinking, the fifth-floor master shook his head with a smile. "Young friend, you might not know this, but truth-grade spirit weapons are extremely precious even in the divine central continent, let alone in our Azure province. Especially something used by a swordsman. It's even more precious." Yi Xian spread his hands and said helplessly, "Senior, I don't have that much money." The fifth-floor master said with a smile, "I know." "Then why did you bring it?" Yi Xian was speechless. Wasn't this making him jealous? The fifth-floor master smiled without saying anything. Yi Xian wasn't stupid. He immediately asked, "Is there any way?" The fifth-floor master nodded and said with a smile, "Young friend, if you can't pay the 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones in one go, you can pay in installments." "Installments?" Yi Xian was stunned. "You can do that?" The fifth-floor master said with a smile, "Others naturally can't, but you can. Of course, it depends on whether you need it or not. If you do, you have to pay at least 25 supreme-grade spirit stones to the drunken immortal in every month. Within 3 years, you have to pay everything back. This is the limit that the drunken immortal can do." 3 years. Yi Xian thought about it and then nodded. "All right." The fifth-floor master placed the sword case in front of Yi Xian. This sword case is called Hidden Edge. With this sword case, your sword manipulation technique's power and speed can be increased by at least 30%. With your current strength, if you increase it by another 30%, no one under the 10,000 Dharma realm, except for those top-notch geniuses of the divine central continent, will be able to withstand a single strike from you. Below the Dharma realm, Yi Xian took the sword sheath. It was cold to the touch, and there were some dark golden patterns around the sword sheath. Yi Xian put his right hand together and gently gestured with his fingers. The 5 bright grade swords in the box at the side suddenly flew up, and then, one by one, they flew into the sword case. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly pointed towards the door in the distance. 500 zhang away from the door, 5 swords were neatly stabbed into a large tree. Yi Xian's expression changed. Compared to before, this speed was indeed at least 30% faster. Now, if he were to fight against someone below the Dharma realm, unless it was a top genius, he could kill his opponent before they could even react. Yi Xian gently stroked the sword case in his hand. This thing was indeed a good thing. However, it was too expensive. Now, he was in debt of more than 20 million best-grade spirit stones. The 5th building master did not stay for long. After receiving 250,000 best-grade spirit stones from Yi Xian, he left. After the fifth building master left, Yi Xian carried the sword case and came to a bamboo forest at the back of the mountain. Standing in the middle of the bamboo forest, Yi Xian calmed his heart. Around him, there was only silence. After an unknown period of time, a gust of wind appeared in the forest. As the wind passed through the bamboo forest, countless bamboo leaves slowly fell from the sky. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly put his fingers together and gently flicked. Bush, bush, bush. In an instant, 7 sword lights crisscrossed in the bamboo forest like butterflies. After a breath's time, the 7 swords suddenly returned to the front of Yi Xian. At this moment, each of these 7 swords pierced through a stack of bamboo leaves. In the air, only a bamboo leaf was left falling slowly. Yi Xian turned and left. In the bamboo forest, when the bamboo leaf was about to fall, a sword suddenly pierced through the bamboo leaf. In a flash, the sword disappeared. In the following period of time, in addition to frantically cultivating every day, Yi Xian also helped with the construction of Blue Waves Academy. The current Blue Waves Academy was undoubtedly the largest force in Jiang country. In terms of financial resources, it was also extremely rich. It had already far exceeded the annual tax revenue of Jiang country's imperial family. It could be said that the current Blue Waves Academy was developing at a terrifying speed. Just as Blue Waves Academy was developing rapidly, a major event suddenly occurred in the Azure province. In a desolate wasteland in the extreme south of the Azure province, one day, a wisp of sword light suddenly shot up from the ground and into the sky. In an instant, the entire sky within a few hundred li collapsed, but the wisp of sword light did not dissipate and remained in the sky. At this moment, the entire Azure province was shocked. Soon, the entire Azure province was spreading the news that a heaven-grade spiritual tool had appeared in the extreme south of the Azure province. Moreover, this spiritual tool was a sword. A heaven-grade sword. Above the true rank was the heavens. A true rank spiritual tool was already extremely rare in the Azure province, so not to mention Azure province, a heaven-grade spiritual tool was extremely rare even in the Central Divine Prefecture. For a time, the entire Azure province was seething with excitement. Countless people headed to the extreme south of the Azure province, and it was even to the extent that people from Azure Wave province and the Central Divine Prefecture had rushed over. Who wouldn't be tempted by a heaven-grade spiritual tool? All of them were gathered in Azure Wave Palace. Yi Xian took a sip of tea and said, "What do all of you think about that sword in the extreme south of the Azure province?" Mo Yunqi shook his head. "There's something fishy about it." Yi Xian asked, "What is it?" Mo Yunqi said, "I don't know." Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't know." Mo Yunqi was speechless. Lu Jioga spoke abruptly. "It's nothing more than a scheme of Kuraki Academy and the other 2 forces." All of them gazed at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga chuckled. "It's utterly impossible for a heaven-grade spiritual tool to appear in the Azure province. Even if it did, it wouldn't appear in such a manner. It's like they're afraid that everyone in the world doesn't know about Daoist. So, I infer that someone did this on purpose." All of them looked at Yi Xian. There was no doubt that this was targeted at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. "They want to lure me over by myself?" Lu Jioga nodded. "That should be the case. This is probably a trap that they've set up for you." Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "Why are they so sure that I'll go there?" Lu Jioga smiled. "If I'm not wrong, then that sword is probably real. They're betting that you won't be able to resist its temptation." Yi Xian smiled. "Then they might have made the wrong bet." He was really tempted by a heaven-grade sword, but he wasn't stupid enough to go there despite knowing that it was a trap. Lu Jioga suddenly asked, "Why not?" Everyone looked at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga smiled. "This is a trap, but it's also an opportunity. Moreover, if you don't accept their attack, they'll definitely make their next move. Now that you have a big family, there are too many people around you that you need to take care of. So you can't hide." On the side, Jian Chuchu nodded in agreement. "Miss Lu is right. If you don't accept their attack this time, they'll definitely make their next move. Right now, there's already a death grudge between you and them. They won't give up so easily." Jiang Jiu frowned. They already know Yi Xian's strength. So, the trap they've set up over there won't be simple. If he goes there rashly, Lu Jioga smiled. What's there to be afraid of? Everyone looked at Lu Jioga again. Although she wasn't old, she was always so calm and composed. Lu Jioga picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. Then she smiled. They've set up a trap. Why can't we reverse it? Jiang Jiu asked. How do you reverse it? Lu Jioga put down the teacup and looked at Yi Xian. After Li Mu's death last time, they definitely won't dare to send people in the Dharma realm or the Dharma defending realm to deal with you. This time, the Heaven Sword appeared in the southernmost part of Green Province. If they lure you there can only be 3 possibilities. First, they want to kill you with a borrowed knife. For example, they want to borrow the genius of the divine central continent to kill you. Second, they want to set up a tactical deployment or boundary there to suppress you and greatly reduce your strength. Or, they want to make you unable to exert your strength. What about the third possibility? Jiang Jiu asked quickly. Lu Jioga said softly, they want to kill you with the help of that sword. Yi Xian frowned. Kill me with the help of that sword? Can that sword kill me? Jian Chuchu suddenly said, yes. Yi Xian turned to face Jian Chuchu. Jian Chuchu said softly, the heaven-grade sword has seized the fortune of heaven and earth. It has spiritual intelligence, which is the so-called sword spirit. If it pretends to recognize you as its master and then attacks you at a critical moment, you will definitely die. Heaven-grade sword. Yi Xian's expression darkened. Up until now, the elegant spirit sword in his body was unable to devour a heaven-grade sword. In other words, if a heaven-grade sword were to backfire, he would have no way of resisting it. However, there was no need for him to devour it. If he could obtain it, he could directly suppress it. A truth-grade sword was worth several billion. What about a heaven-grade sword? That was definitely an astronomical figure. He would be lying if he said he was not tempted. However, he also knew that since the other party dared to take out such a precious sword to set up a trap, this trap would definitely not be ordinary. At this moment, Lu Jioga said, although it is dangerous, it is also an opportunity. If you go, first, you may obtain a heaven-grade sword. Second, you can buy some time for Blue Waves Academy so that its students and Dao soldiers can have more time to train. At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. You have 12 metal men. Even if the Dharma realm attacks, with your current strength and the addition of these 12 metal men, you will be able to resist for some time. If the Dharma realm doesn't act, even the top 10 geniuses of the divine central continent will find it difficult to kill you. Jiang Jiu shook his head. It is still dangerous. Lu Jioga was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said with a smile, Miss Lu, I have a question. Lu Jioga looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said with a smile, why should I be led by the nose by them? Lu Jioga looked at Yi Xian, waiting for him to continue. Yi Xian smiled but did not speak. After a moment, Lu Jioga suddenly shook his head with a smile. I miscalculated. Indeed, we can do the opposite. What are you talking about? Mo Yunqi suddenly asked. Lu Jioga smiled. Read more books. Mo Yunqi's face darkened. Was he saying he was stupid? At the side, Bai Zhe patted Mo Yunqi's shoulder. You are stupid and do not know yourself. Look at me, although I do not understand, I do not ask. If I do not ask, they will not know that I am stupid. Everyone, seeing their expressions, Bai Zhe was stunned. Did I say something wrong? Everyone shook their heads. Mo Yunqi patted Bai Zhe's shoulder with a pitiful expression. Bai Zhe, after the sky turned dark, Yi Xian suddenly left Blue Waves Academy. And the moment Yi Xian left Blue Waves Academy, clouds moved in all directions. Great Cloud Realm, Kuraki Academy. Mu Qingxian stood in front of Howren Palace. He had been staring at the leaf sword above the horizontal board for a long time. After an unknown amount of time, a black-robed man suddenly appeared behind him. Dean, Yi Xian has already left Blue Waves Academy. Looking at the direction he is going, it should be the southernmost region of Qingzhou. However, for some reason, after he went to the southernmost region, he suddenly disappeared. Our people have lost track of him. Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. After a moment, he said softly, "This person is already the sword master. It is not strange for you to lose track of him. However, it does not matter. He will definitely arrive. He cannot refuse a heaven-rank sword. Inform Great Cloud Empire and Dark World that we can start." Yi Xian went to the southernmost region. No one knew who spread this news, but it spread throughout the entire Qingzhou in an instant. Everyone knew that Yi Xian was definitely going for that heaven-rank sword. For a moment, everyone in Qingzhou was discussing whether that sword would fall into the hands of Yi Xian. However, just when everyone thought that Yi Xian went to the southernmost region, a black-robed man carrying a sword case quietly entered Great Cloud Realm. God knows, Ghost knows. P.S. I discovered that there are not many updates recently, but no one scolded me. Other than love, I can't think of any other reason. It is undeniable that you all love me, covet me, want to possess me. Chapter 181. Great Cloud Empire. Great Cloud Empire occupied almost one-third of Qing Province's land area. It was a well-deserved super overlord in Qing Province. At its peak, its imperial power was above all the forces in Qing Province. Even Kuraki Academy and Dark World had to bow down to it. However, there was an old saying that went, "Prosperity leads to decline." After reaching the pinnacle of its power, this once supreme overlord of the Green Province began to decline. After a few muddle-headed emperors wantonly squandered and tossed about, this once supreme overlord was once faced with a split. Just when Great Cloud Empire was on the verge of falling apart, a king appeared in the empire. Lian Wanli. It was this King Yishan who turned the tide and saved the ancient empire that was about to fall apart. Although Great Cloud Empire wasn't at its peak, no one in Qing Province dared to belittle it. Great Cloud Empire's imperial palace, Supreme Harmony Hall. There were only two people in the hall. An 11 or 12-year-old boy in a dragon robe and crown was sitting on the dragon throne. The little boy sat upright with a solemn expression. Below him stood a woman. She wore a black, tight-fitting dress with a vivid and lifelike rainbow phoenix embroidered on it. The rainbow phoenix's wings were spread open and its head was raised up high. Its eyes were cold and indifferent, making it look very noble. The little boy looked at the woman. "Sister." Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something and hastily changed his words. "Lianqing, Jiang country is far away from our Great Cloud Empire and has no conflict of interest with it. Why should our Great Cloud Empire be its enemy? It's not in the interest of Great Cloud Empire." The woman walked to the little boy and pointed to the map. "Who do you think is the biggest threat to Great Cloud Empire in Qing Province?" The little boy pondered for a moment and said, "Jiang State?" The woman shook her head. The little boy looked at the woman. "Then who is it?" The woman chuckled. "Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and the ancient families in the country." The little boy frowned slightly. "Then why do you want to attack Jiang State?" The woman looked at the little boy without speaking. The little boy pondered for a long time. In the end, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly raised his head to look at the woman. "You want to use the state of Jiang? No, you want to use that Yi Xian to weaken them." Hearing this, a hint of relief appeared in the woman's eyes. "But our Great Cloud Empire has already lost hundreds of Black Flame cavalrymen," the little boy said in a deep voice. The girl sat beside the little boy, who hurriedly made way for her. The girl held his hand and said, "The Black Flame cavalrymen are no longer loyal to the imperial family. They have been infiltrated by Kuraki Academy, the Dark World, and various aristocratic families. Their true loyalty isn't to the imperial family of Great Cloud Nation. Therefore, the imperial family of Great Cloud Nation doesn't suffer any loss. On the contrary, we can also remove an unstable factor." The little boy tilted his head and looked at the woman. "But if this goes on, Great Cloud Empire will suffer heavy losses." The woman shook her head. "These clans, sects, and powers, including Kuraki Academy, seem to be protecting Great Cloud Empire, but they're actually encroaching on Great Cloud Empire. Not only have they infiltrated the imperial court, the army, and even the Imperial clan. If this goes on, Great Cloud Empire will be devoured by them in less than 10 years. As she spoke, she stretched out her left hand. These forces are like malignant tumors growing on our hands, and they're already connected to our flesh and blood. If we cut them off, we'll naturally feel pain. But if we don't, it won't just be pain, but death. The little boy fell silent for a long time. In the end, he picked up a memorial to the throne in front of him. There were 2 large words on the memorial, Yi Xian. The little boy flipped open the memorial to the throne. It was full of records about Yi Xian from the Azure City until now. There were a lot of detailed records about him. After a short while, the little boy sighed softly. Yi Xian is actually willing to live and die with Jiang country. Alas, how great would it be if Jiang country had such an outstanding talent? As he spoke, he turned to look at the woman beside him. Big sister, what do you think of him? The woman glanced at the memorial and smiled. What do you think? The little boy thought for a moment and said, I want to listen to you. The woman didn't speak. She just took the little boy's hand and walked out of the hall. She looked at the distant sky and smiled. If he's a friend, he's trustworthy and worthy of being entrusted. If he's an enemy, he should be killed at all costs. The little boy looked up at the woman. Big sister, do you want to be an enemy or a friend? The woman rubbed the little boy's head gently. You're the emperor of Great Cloud Empire. You decide. The little boy thought for a moment and said, I want to be friends with him. The woman smiled. But the little boy spoke in a deep voice. My Great Cloud Empire has no enmity with him, nor do we have any conflict of interest with him. It's not in the interest of my Great Cloud Empire to be enemies with him, but it's in the interest of my Great Cloud Empire to have a trustworthy friend with him. The woman looked at the little boy with a trace of gratification in her eyes. She turned to look at the little boy. Pass down my order. Summon all the major families to the extreme south to besiege and kill Yi Xian. Yes. Someone answered in the dark. Big sister? The little boy looked at the woman in astonishment. The woman smiled. We're helping him. With that, she looked up at the distant sky and gently stroked her hair behind her ears. Some people are going to be unlucky. Night fell. Countless people suddenly left the imperial capital of Great Cloud Empire. They were all heading to the same place, the extreme south. And their target was Yi Xian. Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and Great Cloud Empire took the lead. These families naturally didn't dare to refuse. If they dared to refuse, then they really didn't want to stay in Great Cloud Empire anymore. It should be known that these 3 forces could be said to be the strongest in the entire Azure province. In the extreme south, a wisp of sword light was still suspended in the air and didn't dissipate for a long time. Somewhere in the dark, Mu Qingxian and the Lord of the Dark World stood side by side. Their gazes fell below the wisp of sword light. Beside Mu Qingxian, the Lord of the Dark World suddenly said, Are you confident this time? Mu Qingxian said faintly, The spirit sealing formation underground can restrict his profound qi, making him unable to use the sword. Although his physical body is strong enough, without the sword, his strength will be reduced by at least 50%. At that time, it won't be difficult to kill him. Of course, even if we fail, it's fine. That sword will give him a big surprise. With that, he looked at the Lord of the Dark World. Where is he now? The Lord of the Dark World said, My people have already found his traces. He's not far from here and will arrive soon. Mu Qingxian nodded. He clenched his fists and a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. Let the people underground prepare. Once he enters the surface, activate the formation immediately. Don't give him any chance. The Lord of the Dark World suddenly said, I don't understand. Why is Lien Wanli supporting us this time? You should know that Great Cloud Empire and Yi Xian don't have any grudges. Could it be that he really wants to unify Azure Province? Mu Qingxian sneered. This person is extremely ambitious. It's normal for him to have such thoughts. The Lord of the Dark World nodded slightly. If he wants to unify Azure Province, without the support of Kuraki Academy, it will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Kuraki Academy was spread throughout the various countries of Azure Province. If Great Cloud Empire had the support of Kuraki Academy, unifying Azure Province would be much easier. It should be known that Kuraki Academy's influence in these countries was extremely great. Underground. At that moment, there were already more than 100 people gathered underground. Among these people, the weakest was in the Nether Passage realm. Elites. They were all elites of Kuraki Academy and Dark World. Among them, there were more than 20 people who came from the Divine Central Continent and were all at the peak of the Divine Unity realm. Of course, this time, their true trump card was the formation underground. Forcefully suppress them. As long as Yi Xian went underground and the formation was activated, Yi Xian would be suppressed instantly. He would not be able to use his celestial qi. Not only would he not be able to use his celestial qi, but he would also not be able to use any secret techniques or magic powers. At that time, if they attacked together, Yi Xian would definitely die. In order to set up this formation, Kuraki Academy and Dark World had spent at least 500 million gold coins and tens of millions of supreme-grade spirit stones. As for that heaven-grade sword, it was borrowed from the Divine Central Continent. This time, they had spent a lot. And all of this was to kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian's growth was too fast, and Blue Waves Academy was also developing rapidly. This time, they were no longer afraid, but fearful. If this continued, Yi Xian and Blue Waves Academy would really change the structure of Azure Province, and even threaten their transcendent status. Moreover, they were already mortal enemies with Yi Xian. There was no possibility of reconciliation. Dark World and Kuraki Academy had no way out. Time passed bit by bit. About 2 hours later, a man in black with a sword sheath on his back suddenly stepped into the wasteland. The man in black was holding his head, and his face was covered by a black mask, so his appearance couldn't be seen. And the direction he was walking in was the location of that sword light. Seeing this man in black, Mu Qingxuan's eyes narrowed. He's here. The mistress of the Dark World nodded slightly and quietly retreated. Underground, more than 100 people were accumulating power, ready to attack at any time. All of them had extremely solemn expressions in their eyes as well. Because the person they were dealing with this time was the youngest sword master in the Pine Prefecture. Moreover, Yi Xian still had the 12 golden men. But fortunately, they were already prepared. As long as Yi Xian came down, he would definitely die. On the ground, the man in black was getting closer and closer to that sword light. Just as he was about to enter the formation, he suddenly stopped. Mu Qingxian was stunned. Not going? The man in black sat cross-legged on the ground and then began to meditate. Mu Qingxian frowned. What the hell? Time passed bit by bit, and the man in black didn't move to the limit. About 2 hours later, the mistress of the Dark World suddenly appeared beside Mu Qingxian and said solemnly, "The situation isn't right." Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at the man in black below. "Find someone to test it out." The mistress of the Dark World nodded. Right at this moment, the man in black suddenly took off his mask. When they saw the man's true appearance, Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the Dark World's faces instantly turned gloomy. The man in black wasn't Yi Xian, but Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi raised his head and looked somewhere in the sky, and he grinned. "Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" Mu Qingxuan's face was ugly to the extreme. At this moment, the space in front of him trembled slightly. In the next moment, Mu Qingxuan's face changed drastically, and he roared, "Immediately withdraw the formation," and everyone hurry back to Kuraki College. With that, he and the mistress of the Dark World vanished. They were very fast, and they vanished into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Great Cloud Realm, Kuraki College. A man in black with a sword sheath on his back was confronting a group of Kuraki College students. The man in black didn't make a move, and those Kuraki College students didn't dare to make a move either, because the person in front of them was Yi Xian. Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the Dark World were extremely fast, and the two of them used less than half an hour to rush back to Kuraki College. Seeing that Kuraki College was safe and sound, Mu Qingxian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He and the mistress of the dark world landed in front of the man in black. Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at the man in black. Yi Xianyu. At this moment, the man in black suddenly untied his black robe and revealed his true face. The moment he saw the man in black's true face, Mu Qingxian felt as if he was struck by lightning, and his face instantly turned pale. Chapter 182. The reason why Mu Qingxian lost his composure was because the black-robed man before him wasn't Yi Xian. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. It wasn't Yi Xian? Then what about the real Yi Xian? As if he had thought of something, Mu Qingxuan's expression suddenly changed, and he turned his head to look at the sky. Heaven-grade sword. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he'd vanished. The students of Kuraki College exchanged glances with each other, and they were dumbfounded. Not far away, under the black-robed man's black robe was a beautiful face. Jian Chuchu. Jian Chuchu raised her head to look at the sky, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. I should have gotten it. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. 30 minutes ago in the extreme south. After Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the dark world left, the people underground dispersed the grand formation and came out. Everyone was preparing to rush back to Kuraki College when a man suddenly looked up. Not far away, a cold light appeared. The man's expression changed drastically, and he was about to make a move, but it was too late. A sword directly pierced through his forehead. The man's body instantly stiffened, and blood splattered from his forehead and the back of his head. Everyone's expression changed drastically, and they looked towards the distance. In the distance, a man was dashing over. When they saw this man, everyone was instantly horrified. Because this person was Yi Xian. Wasn't Yi Xian at Kuraki College? Everyone was stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian's speed increased explosively, and at the same time, the 7 swords flew into the crowd like 7 bolts of lightning. In an instant, the heads of the 7 people flew off at the same time. Instant kill. As for Yi Xian, he charged into the crowd as well. After he charged into the crowd, those people were about to make a move, but at this moment, the 5 golden men suddenly appeared. In the blink of an eye, 7 or 8 people were instantly killed by the 5 golden men before they could even react. Everyone's expression changed drastically, and they retreated rapidly. At this moment, under the attack of Yi Xian and the 5 golden men, they had completely lost the courage to resist. Because no matter if it was Yi Xian or the 5 golden men, they were instantly killed. Their strength was suppressed without any suspense. By retreating, they had completely destroyed their only hope of survival. If a group of people joined forces, they would still have a fighting chance. In fact, it should be said that they definitely had a fighting chance. After all, these 5 golden men could only exist for 15 minutes. As long as they could drag it out for another 15 minutes, the 5 golden men would disappear and they would be able to stop Yi Xian. In a one-on-one fight, no one could stop Yi Xian, but in a one-on-one fight, they could still beat him. At this moment, Yi Xian had not reached the level where he could fight 100 people alone. Unfortunately, at this moment, they were all scared out of their wits by Yi Xian and the 5 golden men. They had no intention of fighting at all. Everyone began to frantically flee in all directions, and Yi Xian's flying sword played a huge role at this moment. The flying swords shuttled back and forth ceaselessly in the field, and every flying sword that flew past would bring along a bloody head. In less than 15 minutes, Yi Xian and the 5 golden men had already killed over 70 people in the field, and over 30 people had already fled. These 30 people were all extremely powerful. They fled in different directions, and Yi Xian and the 5 golden men could do nothing to them, especially the 5 golden men, who existed for an extremely short period of time. Therefore, Yi Xian did not chase after them. After the 30 people escaped, Yi Xian led the 5 golden men directly underground. In a deep pit, there was a circular altar with a sword in a scabbard floating on it. Around the altar, there were 4 bolts of lightning that locked the sword tightly like iron chains. Heaven-grade sword. Yi Xian hurried over. As soon as Just as he got close, a sharp sword aura suddenly shot towards him. Yi Xian frowned and stabbed with his sword. At the tip of the sword, a cold gleam appeared. Bang! The sword aura shattered with a loud bang, and Yi Xian himself took over 10 steps back. On the altar, the sword in the scabbard suddenly trembled violently. Yi Xian did not dare to waste any more time. He immediately commanded the 5 golden men to charge over. Another wisp of sword energy shot out, but it was forcefully blocked by the 5 golden men. Soon, the 5 golden men rushed to the altar and broke the 4 bolts of lightning that locked the sword. They broke it easily. Sensing this scene, Yi Xian did not feel happy at all. Instead, his face darkened. As soon as the 4 bolts of lightning were broken, the sword in the middle of the altar was about to escape, but it was held tightly by the hands of one of the golden men. At this time, Yi Xian walked up the altar. Yi Xian did not touch the sword. Instead, he had the 5 golden men bring the sword to the 2nd level of the World Prison Pagoda. After entering the World Prison Pagoda, the sword that was originally trembling violently suddenly calmed down. However, it soon began to tremble slightly again. It was afraid. Yi Xian could clearly feel that the sword was afraid. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian closed the door of the 1st level and left the underground. Inside the World Prison Pagoda, after the golden man's spiritual qi was exhausted, he released his hands, and the sword regained its freedom. In an instant, it suddenly flew around the 1st floor and released rays of sword light to attack the walls of the pagoda. Clearly, it wanted to get out. Unfortunately, the World Prison Pagoda was sturdy enough. No matter how it slashed, the World Prison Pagoda did not suffer any damage. However, the sword did not stop. Instead, it became even fiercer. In an instant, the entire 1st level was filled with sword light and sword cries. It was very noisy. At this time, at the top of the World Prison Pagoda, a sword in the middle suddenly trembled. In an instant, the entire 1st level of the World Prison Pagoda became quiet. In the corner, a sword was trembling. Outside, after Yi Xian came out of the ground, Mo Yunqi came in front of him and grinned. The battlefield has been cleaned up. We have obtained more than 40 supreme-grade spirit weapons, 300 million gold coins, 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, and other miscellaneous items. As he said that, he sized up Yi Xian. Got it? Yi Xian nodded. Let's go. After that, the 2 of them quickly disappeared. Not long after Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi left, Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the dark world appeared above them. When they saw the corpses all over the place, their faces instantly became extremely ugly. Soon, Mu Qingxian came to the underground. At this moment, the altar was already empty. Completely empty. Mu Qingxuan's face was already livid. He clenched his fists and his entire body was trembling slightly. He did not have the slightest bit of calmness and elegance from before. It was gone. A heaven-grade sword was gone. Mu Qingxuan's heart was bleeding. This sword was borrowed from the Divine Central Continent by Kuraki Academy. In other words, this sword did not belong to Kuraki Academy. It was lost. Even if they sold Kuraki Academy, they would not be able to afford it. At this moment, the mistress of the dark world suddenly said, "Does that sword have other mysteries?" Hearing this, Mu Qingxian suddenly woke up. He slowly closed his eyes and formed a strange hand seal with both hands. Soon, the space in front of him began to tremble slightly. After an unknown amount of time, Mu Qingxian frowned deeply and his face was extremely gloomy. "I can't feel it." The mistress of the dark world said in a low voice, "He should not have officially subdued that sword. Once he does, he will definitely use it. At that time, activate the sword technique and the sword will counterattack. You will definitely be able to kill him." Mu Qingxian shook his head. There was a trace of complexity in his eyes. "We have thought too simply of this person." As he spoke, he returned underground and glanced at the corpses that covered the ground. A long time later, he said in a soft voice, "This person should have seen through the trap that we set up, and that's why he acted in such a way. Without the suppression of the Grand Formation, he is already invincible in Qingzhou under 10,000 Laws realm." Invincible. The mistress of the dark world remained silent. Because that was the truth. Mu Qingxian once again glanced at the corpses on the ground and his expression was somewhat dejected. This person has a sword immortal behind him. A sword immortal is enough to make both our forces not dare to use the 10,000 laws realm and those above the 10,000 laws realm. Besides the 10,000 laws realm, Yi Xian's strength is already invincible in Qingzhou. Now, his Blue Waves Academy is rapidly developing. With this momentum, in at most a year, the situation of Qingzhou will change. At that time, I'm afraid there will be no Dark World or Kuraki Academy in Qingzhou. Thorough. In fact, he had already seen through everything. And because he saw through everything, the previous plan was actually his last gamble. Unfortunately, it was a complete defeat. Yi Xian didn't fall for it. On the contrary, Kuraki Academy and Dark World suffered a double loss. At this time, the mistress of the Dark World suddenly said, "Is there any reply from your headquarters?" Mu Qingxian shook his head. "I don't know what they plan to do. However, reconciliation is absolutely impossible. Even if Yi Xian takes the initiative to ask for peace, they absolutely won't dare to. If Yi Xian doesn't die, sooner or later he will enter the Central Divine Prefecture. At that time, the headquarters will definitely be fatally threatened. Now, they are also in a difficult position. However, let's see how they make their move." The mistress of the Dark World nodded. "My Dark World too. Now, both of us have already changed from taking the initiative to being passive. If they don't make their move, both our forces will have no choice but to withdraw from Qingzhou. At that time, the development speed of Yi Xian and Blue Waves Academy will be even more terrifying." Mu Qingxian nodded. "Wait for the next part. As for that sword, I hope everything goes smoothly. Even if we can't kill him, we have to injure him severely." The mistress of the Dark World also nodded slightly. "If we can injure him severely at that time, it will be relatively easier to deal with him. However, this person is courageous and astute, and he himself is incomparably mysterious. That sword immortal is also the same. Until now, we still can't find any information about her." Speaking up to here, he sighed softly. Actually, at that time, Dark World and Yi Xian didn't have any conflict. Unfortunately, Dark World brought this upon themselves and forcefully interfered, making him and Yi Xian become mortal enemies. It would be a lie to say that he didn't regret it. Unfortunately, now, Dark World was the same as Kuraki Academy, there was no way out. After a quarter of an hour, the two left. On the other side, Yi Xian suddenly stopped riding the Black Wolf. He faced Mo Yunqi beside him. "Bring the spoils of war back to the imperial capital and hand them all to Imperial Tutor Lu. She will distribute them." "What about you?" Mo Yunqi asked. Yi Xian grinned. "Let's go to the Great Cloud Realm." Mo Yunqi's expression changed slightly. "Bandit Yi, don't act recklessly. The current you should properly develop your own strength." Yi Xian shook his head. "All along, they have been targeting me time and time again. Why do they dare to target me? Because they think that I am easy to bully. They think that I will endure it. But this time, I don't want to endure it. Because if I endure for too long, I am afraid that my sword will rust." As he spoke, he grinned. "This time, I am going to Great Cloud Realm, not for wealth, not for opportunities, not for cultivation. I am only going to kill." After speaking, he rode the Black Wolf and charged out. Very quickly, he disappeared from Mo Yunqi's sight. P.S. Recently, a lot of people have come to the circle to diss me. Everyone, don't care about them. They are just jealous of my handsomeness. As the saying goes, those who are not envied by others are ugly. Ask yourself honestly. My writing might not be particularly good, but I am definitely the most handsome in Vertical Book City. There is a poem that says, "The first time we met in Vertical Book City, the moment we saw Blue Luan, we were wrong for life. Most men in the world are fickle, only Blue Luan has high moral integrity." Li Bai. Genius 1 second. Remember website address. Mobile version website. Chapter 183. Great Cloud Realm. In fact, Yi Xian had wanted to go to Great Cloud Realm a long time ago because he never liked to be passive. All this time, it had always been Kuraki Academy and Dark World attacking, while he could only passively receive their attacks. He didn't want to continue being passive. Previously, he was passive because he was worried about Songlan Academy. But now, Songlan Academy was already on the right track. Even if he wasn't around, Songlan Academy would still be able to operate well. It was time to take the initiative. Just as he said, this trip to the Great Cloud Realm was not for cultivation, not for fortuitous encounters, not for wealth, but to kill. Murder. This time he was going to kill. Watching Yi Xian disappear into the distance, Mo Yunqi was stunned for a long time. Finally, he grinned and said, "Wait for us." With that, he turned around and left. Songlan Academy. The current Azure Billow Academy had undoubtedly become the strongest power in the state of Jiang. Of course, this was inseparable from the help of the Kuraki Academy and the Immortal Intoxication Pavilion. If it wasn't for the assistance of these two forces, it would be impossible for Songlan Academy to develop so quickly. The reason why the state of Jiang and the Drunken Immortal were helping them was obviously because of Yi Xian. It should be said that the interests of the three parties were now tied together. Especially Jianghua, the reason why they helped Songlan Academy so much was because Jiang Jiu was at Songlan Academy. Songlan Academy's strongest Dao soldier was led by Jiang Jiu. Moreover, the relationship between Jiang Jiu and Yi Xian was particularly unusual. Yi Xian was strong, Songlan Academy was strong. It could be said that Jiang country was strong. The king of Jiang country and Jiang Yuetian were very clear about this. In the future, Jiang Jiu and Yi Xian's goal was the Sea of Stars, not this mere Jiang country. As for Drunken Immortal Tavern, their target was not Azure Province, but the Central Divine Prefecture. They were waiting for Yi Xian to go to the Central Divine Prefecture. It was only a matter of time before Yi Xian went to the Central Divine Prefecture. The greater Yi Xian's achievements in the future, the greater the rewards that the intoxicated Immortal House could obtain. The Drunken Immortal Restaurant was doing business, and they were very clear about one thing. Most of the time, investors could be the most profitable. Kanglin Palace. Mo Yunqi, Jian Chuchu, Mo Yuan and the others were all present. Now, the one in charge of Azure Billow Academy was Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga glanced at everyone. "Everyone, what do you think about Dean Yi going to Great Cloud Realm?" Mo Yuan shook his head. "How impulsive." Feng Lan also nodded. "The most important thing right now is to develop Songlan Academy and raise his personal strength. If he goes to Great Cloud Realm now, I'm afraid there will be trouble again." "Trouble?" Lu Jioga laughed. "If he doesn't go, there won't be any trouble?" Everyone looked at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga took a sip of tea, and then he chuckled. "Right now, we are in a life and death situation with Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. If Headmaster Ji hadn't perished, I believe there might be room for negotiation. However, Headmaster Ji has fallen. Given our headmaster's personality, there is absolutely no possibility of reconciliation. Both Kuraki Academy and Dark World are aware of this as well. Hence, there is no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides." With that, she looked at Mo Yuan and Feng Lan. "The two of you must not have any thoughts of reconciliation. Otherwise, there will be no future for the Confucian Dao in him." Mo Yuan laughed bitterly. "Don't worry. My Confucian Dao will not be as pedantic as before. We have to reason, but we still have to fight." Lu Jioga nodded. She glanced at Mo Yunqi and the others. "The few of you, besides Jian Chuchu, are not strong enough. There is already a huge gap between you and him. If you can't make up for this gap, the few of you will only get further and further away from him. Do you understand?" Mo Yunqi laughed bitterly. "This fellow's strength is growing so quickly. We are also helpless." Lu Jioga shook her head. "From today onwards, besides Ji and Chuchu, the two of you will join my Songlan Academy's Dao soldiers and cultivate together with them." Mo Yunqi hesitated for a moment and said, "There is no need for the two of us, right?" Lu Jioga said indifferently, You think you are very strong? Mo Yunqi chuckled. Although we are not comparable to Bandit Yi in this Zhonglan Academy, besides Bandit Yi, Bai Zhe and I are considered the strongest, right? Lu Jioga smiled faintly. She turned and looked outside the hall. Dashu. As soon as she finished speaking, a burly middle-aged man walked into the hall. The middle-aged man looked at Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi stood up and walked to the side with you. In the next moment, Mo Yunqi suddenly vanished, and numerous afterimages appeared. His speed was extremely fast. But bang! Along with a muffled sound, Mo Yunqi returned to his original position. In front of him, the man called Dazhu didn't move at all. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe's expressions became serious when they saw this scene. Dazhu bowed slightly to Lu Jioga and Jiang Jiao, and then he turned and left. The hall suddenly went silent. Lu Jioga glanced at Mo Yunqi. After the meeting, I will take them to a secret place to train. You and Bai Zhe can come or not. Besides that, there is one more thing. Our Zhonglan Academy is about to advance into the Great Cloud Realm. Jiang Jiao looked at Lu Jioga. You want to go to the Great Cloud Realm to develop? Lu Jioga shook her head and smiled. The Great Cloud Realm isn't our goal. The reason we want to advance into the Great Cloud Realm is because after our dean enters the Great Cloud Realm, the Great Cloud Realm will change. We have to be ready to go and support him at any time. Change. Hearing this, the hall quieted down. If Yi Xian went to the Great Cloud Realm, would something good happen? Obviously not. 2 hours later, Lu Jioga and Zhonglan Academy's Dao soldiers left Zhonglan Academy. Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi were also among them. On a cloud ship, in a private room, inside the prison pagoda. Yi Xian stood in the corner of the first floor, and in front of him was a sword with a scabbard. At this moment, the sword was still trembling. Obviously, it was very afraid. Heaven-class sword. Yi Xian's expression was extremely serious. Not because of the sword, but because of the pagoda. Ever since he obtained this pagoda, it had been constantly refreshing his understanding. What kind of pagoda was this? Who exactly was that sword Immortal's sister? Whose swords were those at the top of the pagoda? He had asked himself this question countless times. Unfortunately, he never got an answer. Collecting his thoughts, Yi Xian faced the heaven-class sword in front of him. After a moment, he turned and left. He did not choose to devour it, because his current ability was not enough to devour a heaven-class sword. If he devoured it now, he would most likely be devoured by the sword. No, he would definitely be devoured by the sword, and with his current strength, he would definitely not be able to withstand it. Moreover, the Spirit Elegant sword was only true low-grade. If he devoured this heaven-class sword, the Spirit Elegance sword might cease to exist. He could not devour it. After Yi Xian left the prison pagoda, he came to the deck of the cloud ship. There were still some people on the deck. This time, he did not reveal his identity on the cloud ship because he wanted to give Zhongmu Academy a surprise. Yi Xian came to the bow of the ship. From this position, he could feel the vast horizon, the majestic mountains, and the boundless land. Sensing all of this, Yi Xian's heart became even more calm. Swordsman cultivated the sword, but also the heart. It should be said that all martial artists cultivated the heart. Heart, there was good heart and evil heart. Good and evil at the same time. What was good? What was evil? Yi Xian did not know, nor did he want to know. He only knew that he had to be good to those who were good to him. As for those who were bad to him, he naturally had to return the favor. Brother, please make way. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's ears. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and turned around. A woman was standing in front of him. She was wearing an ink-colored long dress. Her hair fell over her shoulders, and her figure was lithe and graceful. She was very elegant and calm. Seeing Yi Xian's appearance, the woman was slightly stunned and exclaimed, "What happened to your eyes?" As she said this, she realized that she had been a bit presumptuous and smiled apologetically, "Sorry." Yi Xian smiled slightly, "It's fine." After saying this, he retreated to the side because he had been blocking the road. The woman nodded slightly, "Thank you." After saying this, she also came to the bow of the cloud ship. The woman looked down at the vast land below and smiled. It's a great land. After saying this, she looked at Yixian, who was not far away. Friend, are you going to the great cloud realm? Yixian smiled. The purpose of this cloud ship should be the great cloud realm, isn't it? The woman smiled slightly. The great cloud realm is the most prosperous place in my Qingzhou. It's naturally good to go and experience it. Yixian smiled and did not speak. At this moment, there were sounds of discussion behind her. The woman turned her head and looked. Not far away, some people were discussing spiritedly. It was very lively. These people were all discussing Yixian. Currently, in this Qingzhou, Yixian was undoubtedly the most popular one. Such a young sword master had never appeared in Qingzhou for hundreds of years. The woman shook her head and smiled. She turned around and placed her hands on the pole, looking down at the vast land below. A light breeze blew her hair, quiet and elegant. Yixian stood at the top of the cloud ship. He liked this kind of tranquility because it allowed him to calm down. At this moment, 3 cloud ships suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The cloud ships were extremely fast and headed straight for their cloud ship. Everyone on the cloud ship also noticed it and looked at the 3 cloud ships. An old man suddenly appeared on the deck of the cloud ship. This person was the steward of this cloud ship. When the old man saw the 3 cloud ships, his expression changed drastically. Blood Wolf Mercenary Group. Everyone on guard. As the voice fell, some cloud ship guards appeared in the surroundings. When these guards saw the 3 cloud ships, their expressions instantly turned solemn. On the deck of the cloud ship, everyone was a little confused. At this moment, the 3 cloud ships had already approached and surrounded the cloud ship that Yixian was on from 3 directions. Opposite Yixian, a man walked to the bow of the cloud ship. The man looked down at Yixian and the others and grinned. This time, we should have a good harvest. Yixian was stunned. Was this robbery? At this moment, the man opposite him suddenly jumped onto their cloud ship. The man carried a machete and walked in front of Yixian. To be precise, he walked to the woman beside him and knelt on one knee in front of the woman. Big sister. The woman smiled slightly. Kill all the men, leave the women behind. Yixian was speechless. P.S. My dad is seriously ill. He has uremia and diabetes. His leg is ulcerated and needs to be amputated. He is now in the operating room and will be operated on immediately. I came at 7 and was immediately busy until now to update my phone. May there be no illnesses in the world. One more chapter. I'm really sorry that I haven't been able to update 3 chapters recently. After this matter is over, I will resume updating. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Please remember this site's address in a second. Mobile version. Chapter 184. Kill all the men, keep the women. Yixian was dumbfounded. He didn't expect this to come from the woman next to him. He did not know this woman, but from what he saw, she was very kind and polite. Moreover, she spoke very elegantly. She definitely did not look like a bad person. But at this moment, Yixian did not expect the woman in front of him to say, "Kill all the men and leave all the women alive." The contrast was too big. Yixian looked at the woman. Why? The woman was slightly startled. She turned to look at Yixian and smiled. What do you mean why? Yixian said, You don't look like a bad person. Bad person? The woman was stunned for a moment. Then she laughed heartily. She laughed heartily. A moment later, she looked at Yixian and smiled. You don't think I'm a bad person? Yixian nodded. The woman shook her head. A person who looks especially good might not be a good person, and a person who looks especially bad might not be a bad person. Do you understand? If you don't, it's fine. There will be opportunities in your next life. Yixian was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. I've learned something. The woman glanced at Yixian and smiled. You're quite a calm person. You're quite extraordinary to be able to remain so calm at this point. But you still have to die. Yixian smiled. Why don't you bring me back to be your wife? Oh no, to be my big brother. The man beside Yi Xian laughed angrily. Just because you're blind? Be our big brother? The man's voice stopped abruptly. A sword was pointed at his forehead. The cloud ship suddenly fell silent. The woman in front of Yi Xian narrowed her eyes. There was a cold glint in her eyes. Yi Xian withdrew his sword. The man was enraged. How dare you? At this moment Yi Xian swung his sword. The man had only said 3 words when his head was sent flying. Everyone, the woman glared at Yi Xian. Who the hell are you? At this moment, she was also extremely shocked. Because the person Yi Xian killed was at the divine combination realm. Even a god combination stage expert couldn't even retaliate against this sword. Yi Xian walked in front of the woman. He was very close to the woman, and the woman gave off a faint fragrance. Yi Xian shook his head. You're quite pretty. Why would you want to be a thief? The woman said indifferently, I was forced by life. Yi Xian nodded. I'll give you a chance to live. Do you want it? The corner of the woman's mouth rose. I have 21 God Fusion Realm experts here and you want to give me a chance to live? Are you sure? Yi Xian pointed to the right with his right hand. On a cloud ship on the right, a man's head flew off. Everyone on the cloud vessel was completely stunned when they witnessed this scene. The woman in front of Yi Xian was also shocked. Is this the 10,000 Laws realm? On the other side, the manager of the cloud vessel seemed to have thought of something. His expression changed drastically, but soon, it turned into ecstasy and excitement. Yi Xian opened his right hand and a sword fell into his hand. He wiped off the blood on the sword and touched the woman's cheek. A bloody mark appeared on the woman's face. Yi Xian said with a smile, one last chance. Surrender or die. The woman glared at Yi Xian. Who are you? Who are you? Yi Xian said, you still haven't answered my question. The woman stared at Yi Xian for a long time. After a long time she said, you're Yi Xian. Yi Xian. The moment she said this, the entire cloud vessel went into an uproar. Hu and Qingzhou hadn't heard of Yi Xian. On the cloud ship, everyone's gazes fell on Yi Xian in an instant. Some were curious, some were excited, and some were fiery. Qingzhou's youngest sword master. The manager of the cloud vessel hurriedly walked up to Yi Xian and bowed deeply. Greetings, State Scholar Yi. I didn't know State Scholar Yi was on the cloud vessel. Please forgive me. Yi Xian smiled. It's none of your business. The manager bowed deeply again and retreated to the side. Yi Xian looked at the woman. A chance to live? Do you want it? The woman grinned. You're underestimating me. As she spoke, she suddenly floated backwards. Her speed was extremely fast, faster than lightning. At the same time, a silver ray shot towards Yi Xian's forehead. However, before this silver ray could get close to Yi Xian, it was shattered by his goodwill sword intent. At the same time, a sword ray appeared 300 meters away. 300 meters away, the woman's body suddenly stiffened in the air. There was a sword in her forehead. The woman looked at the distant sky in a daze. So fast. On the cloud vessel, Yi Xian opened his right hand. The sword in the woman's forehead suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was already in Yi Xian's palm. However, it quickly flew out again. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with flying swords. 10 breaths later, no one from the Blood Wolf mercenary group was still alive. Yi Xian looked through the spoils of war. There were 300 million gold coins and 500,000 top-grade spirit stones. He estimated that he now had nearly 1 billion gold coins in cash, and about 2 million top-grade spirit stones, excluding the ones used to activate the Golden Man. As for the top-grade spirit weapons and bright-grade equipment, he left them in Songlan Academy. Songlan Academy needed them more than him. He also believed that Songlan Academy would give him a big surprise in the future. He promised Old Ji that he would make Songlan Academy the best academy in Azure Firmament World. He would definitely do it. At this moment, the manager suddenly said, State Scholar Yi, what are your plans for the 3 cloud vessels? 3 cloud vessels. Yi Xian was slightly stunned and then asked, how much is one ship worth? The manager thought for a moment and then said, About 100 million for one ship. If State Scholar Yi wants to sell it, my drunken immortal in can buy it. 300 million. Yi Xian nodded, sure. Convert the gold coins into top-grade spirit stones and then give it to State Zhang's 5th building master. Tell him that I am repaying the debt. The manager bowed slightly, okay. After that, he was about to say something, but at this moment, a cloud vessel guard suddenly came. Steward Wu, we have entered the Great Cloud Territory. Great Cloud Territory. Yi Xian turned around and looked into the distance. Although he had no eyes, he could still feel everything. At the end of the distance, there was the outline of a city. It was very big, several times bigger than all the cities he had seen in Azure Province. Is this the imperial capital of Great Cloud Empire? Yi Xian asked. The manager shook his head and said with a smile, State Scholar Yi, this is not the imperial capital of Great Cloud Empire, but a small city on the border of Great Cloud Empire called Nanxing City with a population of about 5 million. A small city. Yi Xian was a little shocked because even State Zhang's imperial capital wasn't so big. It seemed that he had greatly underestimated Great Cloud Empire. Not only Great Cloud Empire. He was afraid that Dark World and Kuraki Academy weren't so simple. But this was also normal. These forces had been passed down for so many years, so they definitely wouldn't be simple. Steward Wu said again, State Scholar Yi, the cloud vessel will stop in the city for a while to refuel. Although Nanming City is the capital of Great Cloud Empire, it is too far from the imperial capital. In addition, Great Cloud Empire has been corrupted in recent years. Therefore, many places are quite chaotic, especially this small city in a remote place. State Scholar Yi, please be careful if you want to disembark. Yi Xian nodded, okay. As though he recalled something, he asked again, is there Kuraki Academy in the city? Steward Wu nodded, yes. Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and various aristocratic families have infiltrated various cities in Great Cloud Empire. Some cities even belong to Kuraki Academy and these aristocratic families. If it wasn't for King Kaoshan, I'm afraid the entire Great Cloud Empire would have been completely divided by these forces. King Kaoshan. Yi Xian made a mental note of these 3 words and nodded slightly. Got it. Steward Wu bowed slightly and left. Soon, the cloud vessel entered Nanxing City and slowly descended. Yi Xian didn't stop on the cloud vessel. Instead, he got off and walked towards the street in the distance. Steward Wu quickly sent a few guards of drunken immortal in to follow him from afar. Although the city was large, the inside of the city was desolate. There were not many people on the streets. At a glance, it was quite desolate. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Yi Xian took out his spirit gray sword, which indicated that he was a swordsman. On the street, Yi Xian walked slowly. All of a sudden, a scream came from the right. Yi Xian turned around and saw a group of men chasing a woman in an alley on the right. The woman was panicking as she ran towards Yi Xian. Behind her, several men were chasing the woman like a cat playing with a mouse. Soon, the woman reached Yi Xian and knelt before Yi Xian. Help, help. Yi Xian bent down and held the woman's arm with his left hand. Just when he was about to pull her up, the woman suddenly raised her head. In the next moment, a dagger was already at Yi Xian's throat, but it couldn't move any further because Yi Xian's sword had already pierced into the woman's throat. The scene fell into silence. The woman stared at Yi Xian. At this moment, there wasn't a trace of panic on her face, only resentment. You, how did you know? Yi Xian shook his head. Firstly, it's too much of a coincidence. Do you think I have the chance to save the damsel in distress? I don't believe it. Secondly, you're running too normally. Under normal circumstances, your steps should be messy, but you're very normal. Thirdly, your eyes, there's panic in your eyes, but there's no despair. Fourthly, actually, all of these are just my wild guesses. I'm just instinctively on guard. She spat out a mouthful of blood essence and fell to the ground. Yi Xian turned around. On the ground in front of him, some strange runes suddenly appeared. Soon, a strange energy fluctuation appeared around him. Formation. Not far away stood an old man. This old man was none other than the cloud ship's steward Wu. Behind steward Wu, there were 7 men in black. All of them were at the peak of the divine unity realm. Steward Wu looked at Yixian and smiled, surprised? This is a spirit sealing formation specially prepared for you. Now, try circulating your profound energy. Yixian circulated the profound energy within his body, but the profound energy within his body was deathly still, and he couldn't circulate it at all. Steward Wu smiled. Yixian, you underestimate our dark world and Kuraki Academy. P.S. I've been typing on my phone lately, so there might be some typos. Sorry. The hospital is too torturous. Genius in a second, remember this site's address. Mobile version. Chapter 185. Dead end? Yixian laughed. When he saw Yixian laugh, Steward Wu frowned. He still has a trump card? Without hesitation, he waved his right hand. Kill! As soon as he spoke, the 7 men in black behind him dashed out. They were all top-notch assassins and were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived before Yixian. Obviously, the spirit sealing formation was only targeting Yixian because the men in black were not affected. At this moment, bang, bang, bang. As a series of muffled sounds rang out, the black-clothed men retreated rapidly. Steward Wu's expression changed. This was because there were 5 golden men standing before Yixian. However, the 5 golden men were not affected by the spirit sealing formation at all. Naturally, they would not be affected by the spirit sealing formation because the formation inside the bodies of the 5 golden men was much more powerful than the spirit sealing formation. After repelling the men in black, the 5 golden men suddenly bombarded the ground. Steward Wu's eyelids twitched. Retreat! Retreat! Steward Wu and the others turned and ran. The moment he knew that the formation was useless, he chose to retreat decisively because once the formation was broken, Yixian would be invincible under the Dharma realm. He was invincible. Before Steward Wu and the others could run far away, an explosion suddenly sounded behind them. The formation was broken. Manager Wu was horrified in his heart, and he suddenly sped up. Right at this moment, a sword suddenly appeared in front of him. Manager Wu's pupils constricted, and he was just about to attack when the sword directly pierced through the center of his forehead. He could not fight back at all. At the same time, the black-clothed men by Manager Wu's side instantly fell to the ground as well. That was because a sword had pierced through their foreheads as well. Behind them, Yixian walked over slowly. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Yixian shook his head. What a waste of my spiritual stones. As soon as he spoke, he pointed with his finger and the swords flew back into the sword box in his hand. After cleaning up the battlefield, he shook his head. Because these people were too poor. They were so poor that they did not even have 50 million gold coins in total. Top-grade spirit stones were even rarer. As if he had thought of something, he turned his head and looked not far away. There were 2 people standing there. Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the An Empire. In fact, when Yixian left the country of Jiang, the Kuraki Academy and the Dark World had already sent people to investigate Yixian's whereabouts. They naturally had to keep track of Yixian's movements at all times. When they learned that Yixian had come to the Great Cloud Realm, the 2 of them were already a little flustered. Previously, Yixian was passively defending, but now Yixian took the initiative to attack. In a situation where the 10,000 Laws realm could not make a move, who could stop Yixian? If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. No one. But the F*King Dharma realm couldn't make a move. Because Yixian also had a backer. If there was no backer, the 2 forces could still bully the weak and play however they wanted. But the problem was that Yixian's backer was too terrifying. Killing the Dharma defensive realm was like killing a chicken, which made them not dare to bully the weak anymore. Helpless. Aggrieved. This was the mood of Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the Dark World. Those who could kill Yixian did not dare to make a move, and those who could make a move could not kill Yixian. How helpless and aggrieved was this? Yixian did not speak and turned to leave. Say what? He had nothing to say to the Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. Mu Qingxian suddenly appeared not far in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. Mu Qingxian said, "There is no possibility of reconciliation in this matter, right?" "Reconciliation?" Yi Xian grinned. "Who was the one who said to me that I would not rest until one of us is dead? It seems to be you? Why, now, you don't want to rest until one of us is dead." Mu Qingxian said calmly, "Do you really think you will win? Yi Xian, if we continue to fight, both sides will suffer." Yi Xian shook his head. "Don't talk so much nonsense. If it's not you guys killing me, then it's me killing you." As he said this, he walked around Mu Qingxian and walked into the distance, but soon he stopped again. "By the way, may I ask how to get to the Kuraki Academy?" Mu Qingxian, ha! Amidst his laughter, Yi Xian disappeared at the end of the street. After Yi Xian left, Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. Beside him, the mistress of the Dark World said in a low voice, "Were you trying to stall for time by making peace with him?" Mu Qingxian nodded. "If this person goes to the imperial capital, no matter if he goes to the Dark World or my Kuraki Academy, you and I will not be able to stop him. Only the headquarters of the Divine Central Continent can stop him. And the headquarters needs time. The reason I made peace before was to buy some time, and this person has clearly seen through my intentions." The mistress of the Dark World said in a low voice, "What now?" Mu Qingxian opened his eyes and looked into the distance. "We must stop this person from entering the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for the Dark World and my Kuraki Academy. Let's go and find the Great Cloud Reliance King." After saying this, the two disappeared. In the city, Yi Xian found the Kuraki Academy, but unfortunately, there was no one in the Kuraki Academy in the city. They all left. Not only did they leave, but all the valuable things in the entire Kuraki Academy had been taken away. Yi Xian could not help but swear at her. Yi Xian did not stop. He turned and left. And now, his goal was the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Great Cloud Imperial Palace. A woman was sitting on "This chapter is not over, please turn the page," in front of a pond. Her feet were floating in the pond. Around her feet, there were countless small black fish. The woman lowered her head and looked at the small fish in the pond. Her pair of pure white jade-like feet gently swayed in the water. Seeing the small fish constantly sucking on her little feet, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up into a smile. At this moment, an armored woman with a long sword at her waist walked in front of the woman by the pond and bowed slightly. "My king, Dean Mu, mistress of the Dark World, requests an audience." The corner of the woman's mouth rose slightly, and her smile became more charming. "Please." The armored woman turned and left. After a while, Mu Qingxian and mistress of the Dark World came to the side of the pond. When he saw the woman, Mu Qingxian bowed slightly. "Miss Lian." Very polite. In fact, he did not dare to be impolite. Although the Great Cloud Empire was not as strong as before, no one dared to underestimate it. After all, it was once the #1 overlord of Qingzhou. Moreover, this Lian Wanli was even more unfathomable. At least, Kuraki Academy and the Dark World did not know Lian Wanli's true strength. Lian Wanli slowly got up, walked in front of the two, and smiled slightly. "Are the two of you here for that Yi Xian?" Mu Qingxian nodded. "Yes. The two of us want to ask for help from Miss Lian." Lian Wanli smiled and said, "You are too polite. Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and my Great Cloud Empire are one and should help each other. How about this? I will send out 50 Black Flame cavalrymen. What do the two of you think?" Mu Qingxian was overjoyed and quickly said, "That would be great." Lian Wanli smiled slightly. However, in order to give an explanation to those stubborn old men in the imperial court, this king hopes that the two of you can give some compensation. It is not much. How about 10 million best grade spirit stones as a token? Mu Qingxian and mistress of the Dark World hesitated. Lian Wanli said indifferently, "Do the two of you think it is not worth it?" Mu Qingxian smiled bitterly. "It is worth it, of course it is worth it. 10 million it is." Lian Wanli smiled and said, "Straightforward. And that Yi Xian is not simple, 50 black flame cavalrymen might not be enough. How about this? I will gather all the great families and let them contribute. As long as all the powerhouses in my great cloud realm join forces, it should not be difficult to get rid of a trifling Yi Xian. Mu Qingxian smiled and said, "This is naturally for the best. My great cloud realm is united, we are naturally not afraid of that Yi Xian." Lian Wanli suddenly frowned. "It is just that these families probably won't cooperate." Mu Qingxian smiled and said, "Rest assured, you and I have spoken, they won't dare to not cooperate." Lian Wanli smiled, "That is good." Mu Qingxian and Mistress of the Dark World thanked him repeatedly, then turned and left. After the two left, Lian Wanli shook his head with a face full of indignation. This Kuraki Academy and Dark World are too bad. So many people bullying one person, really shameless. This king really can't stand it anymore. Come, bring this king's heavy azure dragon blade. This king wants to peel a pear? The Armored Woman. End of this chapter. Chapter 186. Great Cloud Imperial Capital. After leaving South City, Yi Xian boarded another cloud ship, and the destination of this cloud ship was Great Cloud Imperial Capital. On the cloud ship, a steward of Drunken Immortal came in front of Yi Xian. The steward bowed deeply to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, Drunken Immortal has investigated Steward Wu's matter. This person is the spy of Kuraki Academy in Drunken Immortal Inn. For causing trouble to young Master Yi, I apologize to young Master Yi on behalf of Drunken Immortal Inn." Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's fine." The steward bowed again. "My Drunken Immortal has sent a spy to Great Cloud Imperial Capital. If there is any movement in Great Cloud Imperial Capital, my Drunken Immortal will immediately inform young Master Yi." Yi Xian nodded. "Thank you for your trouble." The steward said, "If young Master Yi has any instructions, just call me at any time." After saying that, he turned and left. Soon, two maids came up behind Yi Xian with two fruit trays in their hands. The two maids lowered their heads, their faces flushed. Yi Xian turned around, and when he saw the two maids, he suddenly froze. He knew them. These two maids were the same two maids he met on the cloud ship when he returned to Zhonglan Academy. At that time, these two maids were going to drug him. Yi Xian picked up a fruit plate and said with a smile, "There won't be any drug, right?" Hearing this, the two maids lowered their heads even more, and their faces became even redder. Seeing the two maids' shy appearance, Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. After a moment, the maid on the left suddenly plucked up her courage and looked at Yi Xian. "You? Are you really Sword Master?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Of course. And do you think I'm very handsome?" The maid sized up Yi Xian, covered her mouth and laughed. "I have never seen such a thick-skinned swordsman, you are the first." Yi Xian was speechless. The maid on the right suddenly pulled the maid on the left and said softly, "Tong Tong, don't talk nonsense." The maid named Tong Tong looked at Yi Xian and blinked. "You won't be angry, right?" Yi Xian deliberately put on a straight face. "What do you think?" Tong Tong grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. "You won't be angry. Because you are a good person. Dandan and I have heard of your deeds in Mizar City." As she spoke, she pulled the arm of the woman beside her called Dandan and said with a tender smile, "Last time, she was the one who wanted to drug you." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What drug?" Hearing this, the two women's faces instantly turned red, especially the servant named Dan Dan. She covered her face in embarrassment. Yi Xian was speechless. From the looks of these two little girls, they were definitely not good medicine. Yi Xian let out a deep sigh. He was too handsome, and he had almost made many women commit crimes. At this moment, Tong Tong suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side and chuckled. "Let me tell you a secret. Dan Dan's dream is to marry a swordsman. Do you want to die?" Dan Dan suddenly hugged Tong Tong and kept tickling her. Soon, the two women were chasing each other on the cloud ship, laughing. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He turned to face the distance. A light breeze blew, warming him up. And at this moment, a white light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The speed of the white light was small at first, but in the blink of an eye, it had increased dozens of times. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He turned around abruptly. "Be careful!" As his voice fell, his figure trembled and he appeared in front of Tong Tong, who was closest to him. He blocked Tong Tong with one hand and was about to catch Dan Dan, who was still a few feet away from him. Boom! A beam of light that was hundreds of feet long suddenly hit the cloud ship. In an instant, the entire cloud ship collapsed with a loud bang, and countless fragments flew in all directions. In the sky, Yi Xian was falling rapidly with the two women in his arms. Behind him was his goodwill sword intent, and this goodwill sword intent was constantly being destroyed. Every time it was destroyed, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Soon, just as he was about to fall to the ground, a sword suddenly stopped him. The sword withstood most of the falling force. Just like that, Yi Xian slowly landed on the ground with the two women in his arms. Yi Xian hurriedly put the two women in his arms on the ground. When he saw the two women's condition, his expression instantly sank. Tong Tong was fine because he had protected her at the first moment, so she was not seriously injured. As for Dan Dan, Dan Dan was the first to suffer the impact of the beam of light. The meridians and organs in her body were all ruptured. Yi Xian hurriedly took out a golden sore pill and fed it to Dan Dan. However, blood kept flowing from her mouth. Dan Dan looked at Yi Xian. She slowly raised her hands and hugged Yi Xian's cheeks. Tears kept flowing from her eyes. I don't want to die." Yi Xian hurriedly took out a few more pills and fed them to Dan Dan. However, it was still useless. Blood kept flowing from the corner of her mouth, and the vitality in her body was also rapidly disappearing. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's tears instantly flowed. I'm sorry. Dan Dan gently wiped the tears from Yi Xian's cheeks with both hands. Are you crying for me?" Yi Xian held Dan Dan's hands tightly and said painfully, "I'm sorry." "I'm really sorry." Dan Dan grinned, and this grin caused more blood to flow out. She looked at Yi Xian. Suddenly she smiled. "Although I can't marry a swordsman, to be able to die in the arms of a swordsman. Moreover, in the arms of our Qingzhou's most powerful swordsman, At this point, more blood gushed out of her mouth. At the same time, her breath was also getting weaker. At this time, she gently stroked Yi Xian's cheeks. Her eyes began to slowly close. "If only I could live, that would be great." Yi Xian hugged Dan Dan tightly. His whole body was trembling. Sensing that Dan Dan's breath was getting weaker, he suddenly raised his head and roared. At this moment, countless white mist suddenly gushed out of his body. Soon, all the white mist poured into Dan Dan's body. The substantial goodwill sword essence. More and more goodwill sword essence flowed into Dan Dan's body. Soon, her broken meridians and organs were tightly wrapped by the goodwill sword essence. At this time, an old man suddenly landed beside Yi Xian. The old man quickly walked in front of Yi Xian and said, "State Scholar Yi, old man, 6th floor master of drunken immortal in, can you?" Yi Xian hurriedly said, look at her. Hurry up." The 6th floor master looked at Dan Dan in Yi Xian's arms. He placed his right hand on Dan Dan's pulse. After a moment, he frowned deeply. "Although her organs are protected by State Scholar Ye's sword essence, but how?" Yi Xian directly interrupted the 6th floor master's words. The 6th floor master said in a deep voice, "Heart Shield Pill. This pill can protect her heart and meridians. It can also slowly heal her. However, one pill is probably not enough. She needs to take it for a long time. This Heart Shield pill costs about 60 million gold coins." Yi Xian said, "I will pay for it. Give it to me immediately." The 6th floor master glanced at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, she is just a maidservant." Yi Xian suddenly turned to the 6th floor master and shouted angrily, "Is a maidservant's life so worthless?" The 6th floor master did not say anything else. He turned and left. In less than a quarter of an hour, he returned in front of Yi Xian. He handed a white jade bottle to Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly opened the white jade bottle and poured out a pill for Dan Dan to consume. As soon as the heart shield pill entered her body, a strange energy instantly spread to her limbs and bones. Soon, Dan Dan's aura gradually stabilized. Sensing this, Yi Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, the sixth floor master said, "Young Master Yi, the previous matter has been investigated. The ones who attacked the cloud ship were Kuraki Academy and Dark World. That light beam was fired by the cloud-piercing cannon. The cloud-piercing cannon is comparable to a true-grade spiritual artifact. It is specially used to deal with air attacks. Their actions are to prevent you from entering the imperial capital. And now, you cannot ride the cloud ship." Kuraki Academy, Dark World. Yi Xian's face was incomparably gloomy. To be precise, it was ferocious. After a moment, Yi Xian faced the sixth floor master and said, "If I don't ride the cloud ship, how long will it take to reach the imperial capital?" The sixth floor master pondered for a moment and said, "Even if I ride the fastest black flame horse, I'm afraid it will take at least half a month." "Half a month?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Too slow. Is there any other way?" The sixth floor master thought for a moment and shook his head. "The fastest way is to ride the black flame horse. Even with the black flame horse, you might not be able to reach the imperial capital in half a month. That's because the journey to the imperial capital is too long. Even the black flame horse can't pass through some remote areas." At this point, he hesitated for a moment and said, "You can stay here for now. We can discuss this further." "Discuss further?" Yi Xian shook his head. "They are after my life. What's the point of discussing?" The sixth floor master sighed. "My friend, even if you want to ride the black flame horse, you won't be able to because the black flame horse only exists in the Great Cloud Empire. At this moment, he suddenly turned to look at a place not far away. There was a horse galloping towards him. There was a patch of black flame under its feet. Black flame horse. Soon, the black flame horse arrived beside Yi Xian and stopped there quietly. Seeing this, the sixth floor master's face sank. Yi Xian remained silent for a long time. Finally, he faced the sixth floor master. "Take care of them. I will pay for the elixirs they consume." After saying that, he flicked his finger and a golden card landed in front of the sixth floor master. Yi Xian faced Tong Tong and Dandan. "Take care of yourself. Live well." After saying that, he turned to leave. At this moment, Tong Tong suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian turned his head. Tong Tong stared at Yi Xian. "We are just lowly maidservants." "You?" Yi Xian shook his head. "There is no difference in life. Take care of yourself." After saying that, he leaped onto the black flame horse. Soon, he disappeared from the sight of Tong Tong and the sixth floor master. Looking at Yi Xian, Tong Tong was a little dazed. Great Cloud Empire, Imperial Palace. A woman sat in front of the Golden Dragon Palace. She lowered her head and counted the ants in front of her. "Io, you little fellows, don't move. Don't move. I'm so angry. I counted wrong again." After saying that, she snorted heavily and started counting again. 1, 2. At this moment, an armored woman walked to the woman's side. "Your Majesty, Kuraki College and Dark World are attacking again." After a while, the woman suddenly raised her head and looked at the armored woman. "He is willing to spend hundreds of millions to save those 2 maidservants?" The armored woman nodded. The woman was silent for a moment. Then she smiled. "Interesting." The armored woman said again. "The Black Flame Cavalry and experts from various aristocratic families have gone to stop them." "Your Majesty." The woman waved her hand. "Don't bother me. I want to count the ants here." The armored woman. P.S. There are some changes in the recent updates. Sorry, everyone. Clasped fist. Chapter 187. Kuraki Academy. At this moment, all the instructors and elders of Kuraki Academy were gathered within the hall. There were a total of 9 Dharma realm experts within the hall. Mu Qingxian was seated at the seat of the host. Mu Qingxian glanced at them. With Yi Xian's current speed, he'll be able to arrive at the imperial capital in less than half a month. At that time, so long as the Dharma realm doesn't act, then no one in the imperial capital will be able to stop him. But if he comes to our academy, then we can only watch as he slaughters the students of our academy. The Dharma realm experts couldn't act. The expressions of everyone here instantly turned gloomy. They wanted to act, but that sword Immortal was like a sword that hung above their heads, so they didn't dare act rashly at all. Li Mu from the Central Divine Prefecture was the best example. He was an expert at the law control realm. However, he'd still died, and he died in such a humiliating manner. There was no solution. This was a situation that was impossible to resolve. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly stepped forward. It's clearly impossible to seek peace in such a situation. Since we can't do that, then we can only fight to the death. As he spoke, he gazed at Mu Qingxian. Has the headquarters replied? The headquarters. Everyone here gazed at Mu Qingxian when they heard this. Presently, their only hope was the headquarters of Kuraki Academy. Mu Qingxian nodded. The headquarters needs some time. The old man asked, how long? Mu Qingxian spoke in a low voice, at least a month. The old man frowned. Why is it taking so long? It only takes a few days for the Central Divine Prefecture to travel to Pine Prefecture through teleportation formations. Why is it taking so long? Mu Qingxian glanced at the old man. Do you think anyone in the younger generation of the headquarters can kill Yi Xian? The surroundings instantly fell silent when they heard this. At this moment, they noticed to their astonishment that not to mention Great Cloud Realm's Kuraki Academy, no one in the younger generation of the Central Divine Prefecture could stop Yi Xian. Even if it was the headquarters of the Central Divine Prefecture, no one in the younger generation could stop Yi Xian. Besides the monstrous geniuses in the top 10 of the monstrous genius rankings, no one in the younger generation of the Central Divine Prefecture could stop Yi Xian. The Sword Master. Even in the Central Divine Continent, a sword master who wasn't even 20 years old would be a top-notch genius. In the hall, the old man sighed softly. This person is unstoppable. Li Xuanzang, the dean of the state of Zhang's Kuraki Academy, was truly foolish back then. From the very beginning until now, it would be a lie if Kuraki Academy said he didn't regret it. Because the school that Yi Xian wanted to join the most was Kuraki Academy. If Yi Xian had joined Kuraki Academy, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Mu Qingxian said indifferently, the matter is already over, there's no need to mention it again. The headquarters has already asked for help from another place. It can be said that the ones who want Yi Xian dead are not only my Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. There is another faction that has already contacted my Kuraki Academy. We only need to stop Yi Xian from entering the imperial capital. At the very least, we can't let him enter the imperial capital within a month. Below, the old man said in a deep voice, this person obtained a flaming horse, so he must have received help from someone in the dark. Could it be the Great Cloud Empire? After all, only the Great Cloud Empire has flaming horses. Mu Qingxian shook his head. The Great Cloud Empire also has a grudge with Yi Xian, so they have no reason to help Yi Xian. Moreover, if the Great Cloud Empire wants to unify Azure Province, they must get rid of Yi Xian. Therefore, this matter is definitely not the work of the Great Cloud Empire. Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something and a cold light flashed in his eyes. This matter might be the work of the Drunken Immortal Inn. Drunken Immortal Inn. Currently, everyone in the world knows that the Drunken Immortal Inn has been supporting Yi Xian. At this moment, the space in front of Mu Qingxian suddenly trembled. After about 15 minutes, Mu Qingxian looked at the people below and said with some excitement, this time, Yi Xian will definitely die. Pass down the order. Do everything possible to stop Yi Xian from entering the imperial capital and wait for reinforcements. The people in the hall replied in unison and then left. Country of Jiang, Azure Wave Academy. In front of the Azure Wave Palace, Missouri Yuan sat in front of the stone steps, and beside him was Feng Lan. Mo Yuan looked at the letter in his hand, and after a long time, the letter in his hand burned. What's wrong? Feng Lan asked. Mo Yuan said softly, he has already entered the Great Cloud Realm, and Kuraki Academy and Dark World are doing their best to stop him from entering the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. I'm afraid his situation is not too good. Feng Lan said solemnly, take action? Mo Yuan shook his head. If the Confucian sect takes action, although we can solve his current predicament, it will bring him more trouble. Inform little Lu to be ready to let that Dao soldier enter the Great Cloud Realm at any time. Feng Lan said solemnly, although that Dao soldier has cultivated the military heart sutra, it has only been trained for a short time, and its combat power is probably insufficient. Mo Yuan smiled, if it doesn't experience battles, this Dao soldier will never be able to grow. Feng Lan thought about it and then nodded, that's true. After saying that, he got up and left. Mo Yuan looked up at the sky and said softly, Kuraki Academy, I advise you to be kind. In the vast mountain range, Yi Xian rode the black flame horse and galloped all the way. It has to be said that the black flame horse was really fast. If it was an ordinary person, they would not be able to withstand the speed of the black flame horse, because it was too fast. On the back of the horse, Yi Xian was expressionless. Behind him, there was a sword box, and inside the sword box, there were 7 swords. Half an hour later, Yi Xian arrived at an ancient city. Pingyang City. The Great Cloud Realm was not like the country of Jiang. The Great Cloud Realm was too big, and if he kept going around, let alone half a month, he would not be able to reach the Great Cloud Imperial Capital in 2 months. After entering Pingyang City, Yi Xian did not stop and went straight to the Imperial Capital. However, when he arrived at the city gate, the gate was tightly shut. More than 50 men in black appeared on the city wall. These men in black all held longbows in their hands, and the arrows were already knocked on the bowstrings. Apart from them, several thousand guards suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian, holding long spears in their hands. Obviously, there was an ambush here. In front of the city wall, an old man suddenly appeared and stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, this is not the country of Jiang. You can't come and go as you please. Think. At this moment, the sword box on Yi Xian's back suddenly trembled slightly, and in the next moment, 7 swords suddenly soared into the sky. Seeing this scene, the old man's expression changed drastically. Release the arrows. On the city wall, the arrows in the hands of the 50 men in black had just flown out, and in the next moment, their heads flew off one after another. In less than 2 breaths of time, the heads of the 50 men on the city wall were all removed. Below, the 50 arrows were all blocked by Yi Xian's spirit elegant sword, because these arrows were not as fast as his sword. In fact, it should be said that there was no comparison at all. Soon, the 7 swords flew back into the sword box one after another, and behind Yi Xian, the soldiers were already stunned on the spot, and none of them dared to make a move. Holding the spirit elegant sword, Yi Xian pointed at the old man in front of the city gate. Can you stop them? As soon as he said that, the black flame horse under him leaped and charged toward the city gate. At the same time, a sword directly slashed at the city gate. Boom! The city gate suddenly collapsed, and Yi Xian left in a cloud of dust. Outside the city, Yi Xian suddenly stopped because there were nearly 1,000 cavalrymen hundreds of feet away from him. Great Cloud Cavalrymen. In front of the cavalrymen, the leader of the cavalrymen suddenly roared. Kill. As soon as he said that, 1,000 cavalrymen charged straight at Yi Xian. 1,000 cavalrymen was not a lot, but when they formed a formation and charged together, it was still very terrifying. Yi Xian was expressionless. He patted the black flame horse lightly with both legs and leaped into the air. When he landed on the ground, he tapped his right foot lightly and flew high into the air again. At the same time, 7 flying swords suddenly flew out of the sword case on his back. Chi 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 chi. Dozens of feet away, more than 30 cavalrymen fell to the ground almost at the same time. And that group of cavalrymen also drowned Yi Xian in an instant. There was a moment of silence. Among the cavalrymen, the sound of swords rang out. Then, 7 sword lights shot out from the group of cavalrymen. Wherever the sword lights passed, great cloud cavalrymen were directly cut in half at the waist. In front of the city gate, the old man stared at Yi Xian in the group of cavalrymen, his hands trembling. Yi Xian. Before this, he had only heard of Yi Xian's name and didn't have an accurate understanding of Yi Xian. But now he knew him. Sword Master. A sword master who was less than 20 years old had such terrifying strength. At this moment, not far away, nearly 300 cavalrymen had fallen, and more were falling to the ground. No one could stop Yi Xian's sword. A quarter of an hour later, there were less than 500 cavalrymen left. Without the power to charge, the momentum and strength of these cavalrymen were also greatly reduced. Slaughter. Yi Xian was still slaughtering. An hour later, there were less than 100 cavalrymen left, and these 100 cavalrymen were already far away from Yi Xian. Corpses were everywhere around Yi Xian. Yi Xian stood among the countless corpses, holding the Lingxiu sword. A smear of blood slowly flowed down the blade of the Lingxiu sword. Yi Xian walked toward the 100 cavalrymen with the sword in his hand. Seeing this scene, the 100 cavalrymen's expressions changed drastically. At this moment, they were already afraid. Really afraid. In the beginning, they were not afraid when there were only 1,000 people. What were they afraid of when it was 1,000 against 1? But now, in the blink of an eye, there were only 100 of them left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly sped up. Seeing this, the remaining 100 cavalrymen turned and ran, but Yi Xian clearly didn't want to let them go. 7 swords suddenly flew out of the sword case on his back, and the next moment, the heads of more than a dozen cavalrymen in the distance were directly sent flying. However, there were still some cavalrymen who had fled, because these cavalrymen fled in different directions. In the distance, Yi Xian stood in front of a cavalryman who was still twitching. This cavalryman looked at Yi Xian in fear. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't escape at all. Because just now, both his legs had been chopped off by Yi Xian's sword. Yi Xian lowered his head and looked at his right hand. At this moment, he realized that his right hand had already lost all feeling. Numb from killing. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared a few dozen feet away from Yi Xian. Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian looked at Yi Xian, and his lips curled into a smile. You're very good at killing. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning. My Kuraki College has hundreds of thousands of people in Qingzhou, and there are also Dark World and countless aristocratic families. Yi Xian, can you kill them all? At this point, his smile suddenly became somewhat sinister. Even if I'm tired, I'll tire you to death. Chapter 188. Tire himself to death? Yi Xian smiled. In fact, he knew that the best outcome for him now was to sue for peace with Kuraki College and Dark World. As long as he took the initiative to sue for peace, there was still a possibility of reconciliation. However, he would not sue for peace. Not even if he died. Not even if he took the initiative to sue for peace, even if Kuraki College and Dark World came to sue for peace, he would not agree. Because old Ji was dead. Old Ji. He had never forgotten this old man. Back then, Kuraki College and Dark World joined hands to kill old Ji. As for old Ji, he could have left. But in order to protect Ji and the other two, old Ji didn't take a single step back. He must take revenge for this. If he did not take revenge, he would not be a man. Moreover, he knew that there was no possibility of reconciliation. He would not believe Kuraki College and Dark World and Kuraki College would not believe him. As long as he gave these two forces a chance, they would give him a destructive blow. Not only against him, but also against the people around him. Tire himself to death? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Even if I tire myself to death, I will kill you before I die. After saying that, he pointed the spirit-elegant sword at Mu Qingxian in the distance. Your Kuraki College has many people? No problem, I will kill as many as they come. After saying that, he turned and walked towards the black flame horse not far away. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared from Mu Qingshuan's sight on the black flame horse. Mu Qingshuan stood in the same place and did not speak for a long time. He knew that Kuraki College had met a person who was not afraid of death and trouble. He also knew what Kuraki Academy would face if Yi Xian arrived at the capital of the Great Cloud Empire before the reinforcements from the headquarters arrived: disaster. Once Yi Xian entered the Great Cloud Imperial capital, it would be a disaster for Kuraki College. Because at that time, no one could stop Yi Xian. Mu Qingshuan turned and left. Not long after Mu Qingshuan left, an armored woman with a long sword at her waist came outside the city. The woman glanced at the corpses on the ground. All of them were killed with a single sword strike. In the same place, the armored woman remained silent for a long time. Then she turned around and entered the city. She went directly to the city lord's mansion. An old man quickly came out to welcome her. "This subordinate greets my lord." The armored woman glanced at the old man coldly. 1,000 cavalrymen and thousands of soldiers. Who gave you the order to send them out of the city to fight against Yi Xian? Hearing this, the old man broke out in a cold sweat. The armored woman continued, "You receive the salary of my Great Cloud Empire, but work as a dog for Kuraki Academy." With that, she turned around and left. Behind her, the old man's head had unknowingly fallen to the ground. In the city lord's mansion, the armored woman took out a book. She lightly scribbled on it. "Another tumor has been removed." With that, she turned around and left. 2 hours later, dozens of people entered the city and retook control of Pingyang City. Yi Xian was sitting by a river. The black flame horse was drinking water not far from him. Yi Xian took off his clothes. There were many bloodstains on his body. All of them were from the previous injuries. Without the Tao Law, he didn't have the power of earth. It was impossible for him to come out unscathed in a battle with more than 1,000 cavalrymen. Yi Xian swallowed a golden sore pill and began to wash his body with the river water. Soon, the river water in front of him was dyed red. A quarter of an hour later, Yi Xian got up and was about to leave. At this moment, there was a sudden change. A person suddenly rushed out of the river in front of him. At the same time, a cold light pierced his throat. Yi Xian's face was calm. When the cold light was about half an inch away from his throat, it abruptly stopped. Because a sword had pierced the forehead of the person in front of him. Blood seeped out from the bottom of the river. Yi Xian opened his right palm and the sword flew into it. Yi Xian turned around and left. On the river surface behind him, a corpse floated down along with the river. Assassinate him? Ever since he entered the Great Cloud Realm, Yi Xian had kept one eye open even when he slept. Moreover, when he was washing his body just now, he had already anticipated what would happen if there was someone at the bottom of the river. Now, no matter where he went, he was prepared for the worst. If someone wanted to assassinate him, they had to be faster than his sword. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared not far away. After Yi Xian left, an armored woman came to the riverside. The armored woman glanced at the corpse floating on the river. Killed with one sword. Clean and neat. After a moment of silence, the armored woman looked in the direction Yi Xian left. Is he going to kill his way to the imperial capital? 2 hours later. At night. The sky darkened and the entire land was pitch black. Yi Xian rode the black flame horse to a piece of flat land and lay on the black flame horse. He naturally had to rest. Without sleep, he would not be able to concentrate, which was even worse for him. Clearly, someone did not want him to rest. In the surrounding darkness, there was a sudden sound of fragmented footsteps. These footsteps were obviously made deliberately. But Yi Xian did not move. About an hour later, those fragmented footsteps were getting closer and closer to Yi Xian, but Yi Xian still did not move. Therefore, those footsteps were getting closer. At this moment, a sword light flashed like a bolt of lightning in this dark night. A few dozen feet to the left of Yi Xian, a bloody head suddenly fell to the ground. The sword flew back to Yi Xian's side, while Yi Xian was still sleeping soundly. On the other side, 2 people were staring at Yi Xian on the horse in the distance. These two people were the mistress of the dark world and Mu Qingxian. The mistress of the dark world shook her head. We are assassins of the dark world. Even the Dao soldiers of the divine central continent cannot do anything to him. Mu Qingxian was silent. The mistress of the dark world said, if we can't stop this person with his current speed, I'm afraid it will not take half a month to reach the Great Cloud Imperial capital. Mu Qingxian turned to look at the mistress of the dark world. Which city is the closest to this place? The mistress of the dark world said in a deep voice, Longyu City. Mu Qingxian nodded. Let Longyu City be prepared. Even if we can't kill this person, we must delay him for a few hours. The mistress of the dark world shook her head. This city is not under our control. Hearing this, Mu Qingxian frowned. Then inform the Great Cloud Empire and let them pass the order. The mistress of the dark world said indifferently, by the time that King Kaoshan gives the order, this Yi Xian will have already passed by Longyu City. Mu Qingxuan's frown deepened. After a moment, he said again, has there been a bounty? The mistress of the dark world glanced at Mu Qingxian. Now in the Azure province, who dares to come and kill Yi Xian? Who dares? Mu Qingxuan's face instantly darkened. At this moment, he realized to what extent Yi Xian's influence had reached. The youngest sword master in the Azure province. Just this title alone was enough to deter everyone. If it wasn't for the hatred between Kuraki College and Yi Xian, no matter how high the reward was, Kuraki College wouldn't come and target Yi Xian. Even Kuraki College was like this, let alone others? Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. His eyes gradually became a little dazed. No one can stop him? Speaking until here, his dazed eyes suddenly became vicious. Since we can't target him, then target the people around him. Target the state of Jiang, target Songlan Academy, target his sister. These people can't be as invincible as him, right? Finishing, he looked at the mistress of the dark world. Let the dark world assassins and the elites of Kuraki College take the cloud ship to the state of Jiang. For every step he takes, kill one person from the state of Jiang and Songlan Academy. Let's see if Yi Xian will return or not. Also, let the headquarters look for the whereabouts of his sister. Doesn't he care about his sister? If his sister falls into the hands of Kuraki College, let's see if Yi Xian can still be so arrogant. P.S. Qing Wan, you're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.